come sit down an old Sparky and ride the lightning. It's Filmshake, the 90s Movies Podcast. I'm Jordan.
And this is Nick.
And this is episode 88, our final episode for 2024, as we've been looking back on 1999 movies this whole year. Nick, what is up? It's your pick. We're covering The Green Mile. Shocker. You shocked me. I know you shocked some listeners that this was your final pick for the year. We're going to get into it.
We were on such a fun run there, and now it's like, not so fast. Fun?
It's the end of the millennium. Things are going to shit.
It's time to walk the Green Mile to our doom.
That's right. It wouldn't be Nick without, ending on a bummer note. Like you said, all your December picks have been super bummers. Super bummers.
And for the fin de siècle of 1999, I went with the biggest bummer of it all. But Jordan, I couldn't do that to you for a whole episode. I had to throw you a bone, so to speak, for our punishment. That being 1999's Beowulf.
In the future lies a fortress at the edge of darkness. The enemy is at the gate, but the real terror is within. A man more than mortal, born half of heaven and half of hell, is their only salvation.
No sane man would come here to face this thing. I'm not like other men.
That you'll have to prove. You can sense it. You can feel it.
Christopher Lambert is...
You should be dead.
Many times.
Beowulf.
Are you sure it's not called Booba Wolf?
Booba Wolf.
Booba Wolf. Answer me this. Why do I have in my notes that this film should be called AKA Dead Boobs 2080? I don't know. I guess there's a lot of women that get killed. Well, I think there's only one woman that gets killed in this in the very beginning, which it's pretty funny. It's funny to me that, so this is Christopher Lambert basically coming off his stint from Highlander and Mortal Kombat, where he played Raiden. So instead of making Mortal Kombat Annihilation, he made Beowulf 99 instead. But it's pretty much the same movie. It has the same production value. It has the same, all the sets look the same. It's in this kind of fantasy, sci-fi, weird world, just like Mortal Kombat, in this other world or whatever. The CGI is terrible. And it even has the same soundtrack. I love how they try and just throw in, a off-brand Mortal Kombat techno soundtrack. It doesn't fit the movie at all.
But it's great. I found this to be a lot more enjoyable than Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe. I thought you were about to say the first Mortal Kombat, because I know you didn't care for that one, and that's my golden 90s action cheese right there. I love Mortal Kombat. But yeah, Annihilation I think was one of the worst movies I've ever seen, but saying that this is better than that is not too high praise, honestly.
Right, that time you punched yourself in the face as hard as you could was better than that time that you took a dump and then slipped and fell in it.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat Annihilation is the dump. And Beowulf is just the punch in the face for sure. But yeah, I mean, this is based on the classic epic poem Beowulf. Really holds up that high bar of being based on classic literature. Where I just love that, the first 5 minutes, there's they're in this futuristic but yet medieval fantasy castle where there's an unseen monster, attacking the people that live there. And then for some reason, there's just people outside the castle that are sieging the castle or just trying to kill anybody that escapes because they might be infected with the evil. So There is a beautiful woman, Patricia Velasquez, that, we talked about with much adoration in the Mummy episode. So this was her like one little bit part before she went on to Mummy fame. She's running out of the castle. They immediately attack her, and they're going to like kill her and put her on not like a guillotine, but I love that it's just like this giant like barber's neck blade, like what do you like a straight razor? Like it just looks like this giant rusty straight razor that they're gonna chop her head off with. But then out of nowhere, Christopher Lambert like shows up and does like 3,000 front flips and kills like all these people single-handedly because he has a horse and like all the weapons you can possibly imagine on his person. I just love how like nobody can take this guy down, and there's like literally 200 people in a field fighting him. But no, the funniest part is that like they let him go, and then he's going back to the castle, and the girl like jumps off his horse, runs back to the siegers, and then they immediately kill her. It makes no sense plot wise, but whatever. Like he had to go meet some other like very well endowed woman in the castle and have romance with her.
Yeah, that woman being Rona Mitra was definitely a 90s crush of mine. She's been in a lot of random stuff I've enjoyed. Famously, she took over for Kate Beckinsale in the Underworld franchise whenever Beckinsale moved on. But she was in all kinds of stuff, man. She's still in all kinds of stuff. I dig Rona Mitra. She's probably too good for this. She doesn't get naked in this like a lot of, or one woman in particular does. But I think she looks great, and she really just, her dialogue is terrible, but she didn't write it, right? She didn't write this movie.
She's basically there to have like half her boobs popping out at all moments in every scene that she's in. It's just like, all right, you're teasing us here. You're just waiting for one of them to pop out like Janet Jackson style. But no, she's the daughter of the king of the castle, Hrothgar, and there's the monster that for some reason, it's like practical effects. Grindel's like in this, kind of gnarly late 90s, like bodysuit, like monster suit. But there's like this weird CGI purple haze that's all over the character. Like, so you can't really see that maybe they're trying to hide that this is practical, like, or it's just a suit or whatever. But I feel like that would have looked a lot better than just this terrible pixelated fog that they put over the monster. Looks rough, but not as bad as like the final boss, like mother of Grendel, who's like somewhat naked trying to seduce the king, in his dreams and whatnot. But she comes back at the end and turns into like this, I don't know, how would you describe the CGI?
Oh, I can describe it for you because someone already did it for me. All right. And I should say, too, that all the times that she pops up before this, she's essentially fully nude. It's Layla Roberts, Playboy Playmate from 1997 in this role with this blonde, is it feathered hair? I don't know what it is. I like it. It reminds me of puberty, but she looks great.
It reminds me of like Christina Aguilera, like late 90s, early 2000s vibe. Like she's definitely got that trashy Christina Aguilera music video vibe going. But I mean, you say she's fully nude, but she's in like this kind of mesh clothing. And even when she's like on top of the king and the weird like dream seance thing she's doing, they don't really show, they don't show the boobs, so like they don't really go. It's like it's not trashy enough, Nick. That's the problem with this movie. It's like it teases you, but it doesn't really pay off. It doesn't give you the big old boobs with their face. It just teases you with them. It doesn't give you like monster blood, but just a little bit. Like the fights are kind of lame. Like everything about this movie is just, it's like the worst kind of trash where it's like, it's a rated R trash sci-fi movie, but it feels like a PG-13. Like it's so low budget and it pulls back on all those elements that you're like, this is what I'm here for, but it just doesn't give it to you.
Well, that description of the monster at the end, and I'll get to your point on everything you just said, but to go back to the point from before, from like 2 minutes ago, if you had read this Wikipedia description before you watched the movie, I feel like you would have been even more disappointed, because the way that they described her final form is, she operates as a seductive succubus, giving birth to monsters, but can also shapeshift into a monster herself. This form resembles a dragon, an arachnid, and a gorgon, not only evoking the Freudian, wow, I've got a Lord of the Rings calendar that I'm looking at right now. I meant to say Freudian.
Freudian.
It would have been cool if it was Freudian. It just looked like Elijah Wood. No, not only evoking
She turns into Elijah Wood.
the Medusa's head, but also evoking the archaic mother by resembling a vagina dentata with phallic talons. She also sexually attacks Hrothgar, inverting the trope of horror film monsters chasing after female leads. So you read that and it's like, wow, that sounds like really wildly imaginative, surreal design and like really deep themes. And then it's just like PS1 CGI, not even PS2.
Yeah. Who wrote this Wikipedia article that was like this invested in this trashy Beowulf ripoff?
Wikipedia is garbage these days, man. They don't let me edit it anymore. And since I lost editing privileges, it's gone to just hell. Like, it's gone to hell.
It's all because you're not on there, Nick. Yeah.
That's why.
You could have been polishing up that Beowulf article.
Well, I enjoyed this a little more than you did, I think. I didn't think it was good by any means, but I think I could go all the way up to like maybe a 4 out of 10 for this, because I enjoyed the weird, futuristic, but like highly low budget setting. I don't know. It reminded me of like a lot of things I watched really late at night in the late 90s, because this feels more like just something that would have been like a made for Sci-Fi Channel, but they do sneak in some nudity, but the violence isn't very extreme. I mean, there's a few bloody parts, like you said, it really didn't go there. So you cut out just a few of the boob shots, and this definitely feels like it could have been on USA at 1 a.m. for sure.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, the coolest violence part, at least for me, was him ripping off Grendel's arm and then, you know, hanging it above the castle, which, correct me if I'm wrong, that's a callback to the original poem. Like, that's what happens, right?
Right. This is a loose adaptation of that, and I love that epic poem. I wrote an extremely long college paper on aesthetics in Beowulf in college that I got 100 on. I stayed up. Whoa. I pulled an all-nighter. I started it I hosted my radio show. I got off at 11. I got home at midnight. I wrote till 7 a.m., left for school, got there at 7:30 and handed it to the teacher, and I got 100. And it was it was a long paper. That was a high-level English class on the way to my very fruitful English major that's gotten me really far in life.
I bet there were more boobs in that paper than this movie.
You know, I wrote about metal and armor a lot. There's not really like a lot of boobs in the original Beowulf.
Metaphors. It's all metaphors.
Maybe so.
Heavy metal boob.
Yeah. So my affection for Beowulf probably increased my enjoyment of this. And I actually liked the soundtrack. I thought it was like goofy and hilarious, but also it was fun.
It was fun. I mean, I make fun of it just because it's an obvious ripoff of Mortal Kombat, but it was fun. I laughed a lot. Like, you know, it's like the medieval soldiers traipsing through the mud in the castle, and it's like doom 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 doom. It's like, okay, calm down.
Right, and the setup for every action scene is Lambert doing 700 backflips.
Yes,
in the background
for no reason.
They don't help him in any of the fights. Sometimes he gets kicked while he's backflipping and just taken out.
Yeah, man, just calm down on those backflips. He probably. You know, not that he needs any help, because he just annihilates everybody in this movie.
He does.
And I mean, his voice, does he, because I haven't seen any other Christopher Lambert movies in a long time other than Mortal Kombat when we rewatched it. But does he always talk like that with the rasp?
Yeah. So he was in another wild movie in 1999, because, you know, I've been going through every movie I can. I'm almost up to 140. He was in this weird Canadian take on the movie Seven called Resurrection, where he's this police detective whose son was killed, and he's just like totally cynical and like burned out on life. And then he lands this horrific case. And he has this really eager partner. And the twist is that his partner is the guy that had to wear the device in Seven. You know, that guy.
Uh-huh.
That's his partner. And the whole time he's talking in that raspy voice where his partner's like, yeah, I can't wait to solve this case. And he's just like, I don't think that this is going to go well for either of us. Like he talks like that the whole time. It's awesome.
His lines in this are just hilarious too, with that raspy voice where they're just like, who are you? I'm an outsider. Or whatever. Like, they're just like, you don't know who I am. It's like, yeah, that's what I'm asking, dude. I was like, my name's Beowulf. It's just like, okay, all right. It's just that one note throughout every moment of this movie. Like, there's no joy, there's no sadness, there's no fear. It's just raspy Christopher Lambert, like Raiden voice. Like, I don't know. It just reminds me of Mortal Kombat and like everything that he says in Mortal Kombat in the same voice.
I don't know. He's a really fun actor to me.
There's nothing to fear but fear itself.
Well, he fears himself because apparently like he's a monster like Grendel is on the inside and he has to hold that monstrous nature at bay and he's like afraid of it.
I can't touch your boobs because I'm a wandering monster.
Right. A wandering monster.
That's right. But he does touch your boobs. We just don't see it. Well, considering it's Christopher Lambert, maybe not. Maybe it was better we cut away.
You want to see Christopher Lambert speaking sexily?
I want to see his ass as it pans up to his white hair.
Well, you know what? I think you should watch that movie Resurrection that I told you about. There's no boobs in that. By the way, Leland Orser, that's the actor who plays his partner there, who is in Seven.
Okay.
But Jordan, the gore in Resurrection is insane. I don't think there was any boobs, if I remember right. Maybe like some dead boobs. But
Dead Boobs 2081.
The case in Resurrection is that the serial killer wants to basically remake the body of Christ with the body parts of people who had the same names as the disciples. So he's basically hacking off body parts from 12 different people and tying them to one corpse. It's so over the top and ridiculous.
That's rough. That sounds rough.
The closer they get to the guy, like they start getting there closer and closer to when the crimes are happening. So then it just gets more and more gruesome to where they get there when he's hacking one of the people up. And that scene is just nuts. And it's not a great movie by any means, but I think Lambert's pretty good in it. Like his delivery really works well there.
I know you said it was a Seven knockoff, but was it connected to Seven in any way?
No, not at all. It's set in a city where it's raining most of the time. And, you know, it's a dark case and you have Leland Orser in the film who something horrific happens to just like in Seven, but not just like in Seven. Something else happens to him.
Gotcha.
Yeah. His name is Andrew and I already told you what the serial killer does in this movie. So I'll leave that to your imagination.
All right. Well,
what would you give Beowulf? What's your score?
2 out of 5.
Hey, that's what I gave it on my scale. 4 out of 10.
Okay.
So we're in harmony.
Yeah. Maybe that's probably too generous. But
yeah, because it sounds like I had more fun with it than you did.
I mean, it was fun. It was just, it's just very bad. Yeah. So objectively bad.
It is. It's not a good movie.
But that's why it's a punishment movie. And, now we're going to talk about something really serious.
That's right. We're talking 1999's The Green Mile.
All right, Nick. I know you have a story. A cyst story?
Right? Yeah. So I talked about how I had this pilonidal cyst in 1999, but I didn't tell anyone. But I had a pilonidal cyst. And the whole year I thought I was dying of cancer. I thought like, this is it. I'm gonna die. I have this cyst. It's probably cancerous. I'm bleeding. I'm in great pain. What if I just endured that all year thinking I'm gonna die, probably near the end of the year, and they'll find my body and be like, man, he was so courageous and such a good soul. He didn't want to trouble anyone.
delusions of grandeur.
Right? He didn't want to trouble anyone about what he was going through. He just suffered quietly and then died peacefully. What a hero. Yeah, and what really happened was the cyst finally exploded in the back of my pants senior year of high school, fall of 1999, and I had blood all over my pants at school around my butt area. And I told my parents that night, and they laughed at me and said, "You have a pilonidal cyst. You just need to get it removed." And then I went to the doctor and told him, and he was like, "You dumbass. You should have called me like a year ago."
Did he literally call you a dumbass?
I've had 2 doctors basically call me a dumbass in my life, and both times I was just suffering through things for no reason. Just punishing myself for no reason, Jordan.
I'm just imagining this doctor in South Louisiana just being like, "You dumbass."
I got the surgery scheduled. I went late fall, and he said, "Look, the way that the surgery was then," he said, "you're going to be out for a couple of weeks. So why don't we do this over Christmas break whenever you're already out of school?" And I was like, "But I work at Walmart 40 hours a week." And he said, "Well, you're going to have to take off at Walmart.
The shelves must be stocked."
They have to be. And then you have to just keep the stupid tinfoil things I had to straighten. Have you ever tried to straighten like 1,000 tinfoil packages? They just keep falling. They just keep falling and falling.
Yeah.
No matter how much you
It's like the Green Mile. It never ends.
It never ends. It's so long.
It's a constant cascade of cacophony.
Yeah. So I went to the doctor. We scheduled my surgery. So I thought to myself, still, like, hey, I might still die, right? Like, I've got to get surgery. I could still die.
I could die in surgery. That would be epic.
Right. And I'll still be like,
I could still be a hero. I could be a martyr.
Right. So why don't I go to the movies one last time? And, you know, The Shawshank Redemption was one of my favorite films, and I'd watched it so many times. I thought, look, this is another mashup between director Frank Darabont and Stephen King. It's going to be hopeful and uplifting, just like The Shawshank Redemption was, and it'll be the last movie I ever see, because after I watch this, you know, I'm probably going to die on the operating table, and that'll be it. I won't make it to the 21st century. That'll just be the end. So I was an 18-year-old when I saw this in the theater. The movie actually, I didn't catch it on opening weekend. It released on December 10th of 1999, and I went to go see it on December 19th, Sunday. Went to see it on a Sunday night. Then I had my surgery the next day, December 20th in the morning. And this was heavily on my mind as I lay on the table being anesthetized. And that was really one of the last things that I was thinking about before I went to sleep forever.
Well, yeah, I'm sure seeing people like electrocuted to death in like, you know, this very procedurally mannered didn't ease your mind as you go into an operation.
Yeah, it was weird. And I don't know why, but they put Vaseline on my eyes and I had a catheter in. So I woke up with a catheter inside still and Vaseline on my eyes. So I couldn't open my eyes. So I was like panic grabbing at my eyes and rubbing at my eyes.
Kind of like they put that black hood over your head.
Yeah, really. And I woke up like, my dick is on fire and I can't see. I'm blind. I'm in hell.
No.
I died and I went to hell.
Hey, and your dick was on fire. Kind of like Tom Hanks in The Green Mile.
Exactly, Jordan. The synchronicity there was insane. And then they came and wiped the Vaseline out of my eyes. And then she pulled the catheter out. And that's still maybe the worst feeling I've ever felt. Ugh. She just ripped it right out.
Well, did they bring in a large inmate to touch your junk and heal you?
Maybe so. I don't know. I kept blanking in and out of consciousness after that. So maybe.
Somebody might have touched my junk.
Right. And I picked up a viral infection, so then I had like 104 fever for the rest of the year up until the ball dropping. So that was wild. That was a good time. Great time.
Fun times.
Yeah, the movie, I'll get into the audience reactions as we go through the plot points. Needless to say, on an emotional level, that was the heaviest experience I've ever gone through with about 100 to 200 other people in my life. I was expecting to leave the movie theater uplifted and excited, and instead, Adrian, my cousin that I went to the movie with, and I drove home in silence. He got out of the car, and I went back to my house in silence with no music on and got in my bed and stared at the ceiling until I had to leave for surgery the next day.
That's what movies are supposed to do, right?
Right.
That's the effect they're supposed to have.
That's right. How about you? Had you seen The Green Mile before this? By the way, I hadn't watched it in the 25 years since. It was such an emotional jolt. I have not been able to go back to this movie for 25 years.
Yeah, same. I had seen it once before I can't remember. I don't think I saw it in theater. I want to say I saw it at home on home video. But yeah, saw it once. I remember enjoying it being very heavy, and never watching it again. So I am glad that you brought it back here. This is one where I feel like I would not have watched this otherwise if not for the show.
I was always planning on using the show as an excuse to revisit this on its 25th anniversary. I didn't know we were going to end up doing all 1999 films this year when I thought about that, but I thought there's only one way I'm going to be able to get myself to watch this again. But of course, this being Filmshake and me prepping the way I do, I watched it twice, almost back to back in the last few days.
Wow. It's quite a journey, my friend. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody, but knowing you, I'm sure you had fun with it.
Yeah, and I watched the 90-minute Walking the Mile documentary.
Oh, man, I forgot about that. That was at the end of the VHS tape that I didn't watch. But it did let me know that it was coming after the credits. All right, so I did buy the double tape VHS set of The Green Mile because, I'm collecting all the movies that we cover. But as I started to watch it, I would just reflected on how good this looked, or I imagined it would look even better, not on VHS. So I felt indebted to the movie to stop the VHS and put on the HD version on my, large flat screen TV, which looked beautiful. I mean, there's still, certain charm to the VHS, and it looked fine or whatever, but I don't know. It's a beautiful looking movie. So I'm glad that I have the set for the collection, but there's just some movies, obviously, that, like watching Beowulf on VHS was fine, right? Like, because it increases the gritty, low budget, stupid charm of it all. So that was fine. But yeah, watching something like The Green Mile, I was like, okay, I feel like I have to watch this in like the highest quality possible. So yeah, great looking movie, beautiful cinematography.
Yes, by David Tattersall, who also did Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace earlier that year, which, whatever you think about that movie, it looks really damn good.
And, I mean, to handle 2 giant films in 1 year, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. There's a lot of double duties here. Like, for instance, Thomas Newman was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Score for American Beauty, which we covered already. Not a movie that I enjoy anymore. I think the biggest disappointment I've had revisiting a movie since we started the show. But the score is fantastic. And I think his score for The Green Mile is better than that, which is insane that he composed the scores for both those movies the same year.
Yeah, the score is really phenomenal in this too. Like really effective, but also like understated for a movie that could dip too far into like schmaltzy sentimentalism. There's definitely a possibility for that at times, but I don't feel like it ever goes there in the score especially. So I really give props to Newman for that.
Yeah, there are a lot of moments that are understated in this movie that obviously in not watching it in 25 years, in my mind, I had made way more graphic than they were, but they're just so understated that wasn't the case. Also, yeah. I think the biggest surprise coming back to this movie is that Frank Darabont has only written and directed 3 films. He's directed 4 total, but he's only written and directed 3. They're all Stephen King adaptations. It's Shawshank, this movie, and then The Mist, which, man, talk about going on a path from like really hopeful to like as bleak as possible. The ending of The Mist has got to be like one of the bleakest, most nihilistic endings of any movie ever. Like Stephen King couldn't even think of an ending like that because he went off book for the ending of that. It was insane.
Interesting. I've never seen The Mist.
It's definitely worth watching. In fact, there's a black and white version that I think is probably the definitive version. That's a great horror film with a lot of the same players. But Darabont, the biggest shock to me, because watching this movie, as soon as you go back to 1935, I think as a technician, just the filmmaking qualities here, like to go into like video game parlance, are god tier. The directing, the camera movements, everything is absolutely top of the line. And you would think like, holy cow, this guy in all of his movies has just shown to be a master of his craft. He's got 2 films and almost the top 25 of the IMDb top 250. And he's only directed 4. So
yeah, that's pretty nuts.
50% of his movies are in there and he hates directing, Jordan. This guy freaking hates directing movies. Like the entire Walking the Green Mile documentary, he's just like, I'm in hell. I hate this. I hate directing movies. And all the actors are saying it too. Like, Jeffrey DeMunn, who's in other movies with him, is just saying, like, the thing no one understands about Frank is Frank hates making movies.
But I guess he's just compelled to make those 4 specifically.
Yeah, the reason that he's only done writing since The Mist and not really directed anything other than the pilot of The Walking Dead, which really fooled people into watching The Walking Dead for a decade. You watch the pilot to that and it's like, holy crap, this is amazing. This show is going to be so good. And then almost all of the rest of it is total garbage. And it's because Frank Darabont didn't do it. But yeah, that was it. He was just like, I can't do it anymore. I hate being away from home. Like, he hates being away from home, number one.
Yeah.
And he just hates the process of directing, even though he's probably, again, like looking at his batting average, maybe one of the greatest living directors as far as his movie's resonance with the public. And he just hates doing it and will probably never do it again. It's insane.
I mean, that is kind of a shame, thinking that there's such potential there that we won't ever see. But yeah, you brought up the authenticity. I mean, obviously he has a knack for period pieces with the Green Mile and the Shawshank Redemption. Both, I feel like, really capture the time period, the setting. All the details are perfect. And especially, I mean, I love Shawshank, but yeah, Green Mile, I think we're going to joke about how long this movie is, I'm sure. Like, it's been a running joke in our text lately, but I think despite like its long runtime, it is very well paced for the most part. And I think because it takes its time, especially in the beginning, and it lets us get to know these characters and really have that sense of time and place, the specificity of the jail, like the death row jail cell, the Louisiana, like you said, the 1935 time period aspect, all that's just beautifully done, captured like and executed so well in every aspect of this movie. So huge props to it for that, for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy. Unfortunately, did not film this movie in Louisiana, which is a shame. If they had made it 10 years later, once all those tax credits were in place and the industry was in place here, I think they would have.
Yeah.
But I remember like the one thing that turned me off in 1999 was like looking at all those hills and being like, that doesn't look like Louisiana. But in those 25 years, I've hiked all over the state. This is supposed to take place in Claiborne Parish, Louisiana, and it actually looks exactly like that up there. You go up there and you don't even feel like you're in the state anymore. They're just giant hills. It's right above Driscoll Mountain, which isn't a real mountain, but it's a 535-foot tall hill, which is not a small hill, and there are a bunch of them up there in the 400 range. So whenever they're driving up and down hills, it actually does look like that where this is supposed to be set.
Yeah, I mean, you bring that up and it makes me think of the bumper or the bookend with old Tom Hanks in the nursing home, and he's walking through the hills, and we have those beautiful long shots of the grassy knoll that he's walking across and stuff. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't necessarily evoke Louisiana for sure, but I will say one thing that is refreshing is to see actual old people like in the beginning of this movie.
Yeah.
Like no Tom Hanks and old man makeup, no like de-age CGI shit. It's just like real old people playing the old part for the character that we see in a flashback that's younger. That shouldn't have to be refreshing, but that is very refreshing watching this movie.
I agree with you 100%. I think they did a few screen tests with makeup on Hanks, and then they just thought, there's a guy who looks like Hanks, and he's a great actor. Why don't we get him instead?
Yeah, I loved it. I was really happy they made that choice.
I'm interested to hear what you think about this. So, I don't know how many times you watched Shawshank. I mean, it's one of my favorite films. It's way near the top. Who knows? It could be my favorite. I don't know. I've watched it probably 100 times. Something about that movie that I think is interesting is, as much as we both poo-poo on voiceovers, that movie has one of the greatest voiceovers ever. It feels entirely natural, but you don't have a setup for the voiceover. The Morgan Freeman character starts talking, and there's no reference for, wait, why am I hearing him talk? And then at the end of the movie, it's like, okay, well, this is like a reverie that he's having right before this final moment takes place. So that kind of makes sense. Here, you have a framing device for the movie, which is the old version of Tom Hanks who's at this nursing home, and he's sitting down to tell this woman the story of what happened to him in 1935 after he gets triggered by seeing Cheek to Cheek on the TV after an old man turns off the Jerry Springer show, which was a great cultural reference for that time.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
But then he starts to tell her the story, and then we go to the actual story that happened in 1935, and we leave them. We don't go back to them until the last 5 minutes of the movie. There's no voiceover whatsoever. I think it's a really interesting choice that actor has a great voice. You could have done a voiceover for this entire film, and you would have a reason to do it narratively, and you don't get that. What did you think about that decision?
Reflecting on it now, so like I said, I was refreshed to see, what is his name? Dabbs Greer playing old Tom Hanks, and the beginning bookend where we see him in the nursing home, and like you said, we get the old people watching Jerry Springer on TV, and we see him traipsing through the hills and talking to the cafeteria line cook and everything. Like, I like all that, and then him getting so upset and at what he sees on TV, and like his relationship with Elaine, like his friend in the nursing home, and starting to tell her the story. Like, I really like how all that sets up kind of the mystery of like, oh, what could this be? Like, what's made this old man so upset? Like, that's a simple setup, and it draws you in, and I like that. As we get into the ending and how it goes back to him and like what happens there, I have more issues with, to where that almost makes me feel like, man, you really could just do without all that and just start in 1935 and jump right into young Tom Hanks and the death row and everything. So I don't know, I feel a little conflicted about that, and I don't know, I feel conflicted about multiple things with this movie. It's like I enjoy a lot of it, but there's just like little things that kind of bother me or unsettle me at the same time. So that's kind of going to be a theme going forward.
Okay, well, we jump back to 1935 after this beautiful shot of it raining outside this nursing home and the rain hitting the windows with the hills in the background as he starts talking. And you get introduced to the mile, Jordan, which is basically just death row. You've got this green lime floor, which is just this great color. I joke with you that this movie has aesthetic commonality with The Matrix, because it's like that same green from The Matrix from a few months earlier.
That's right, The Matrix. I joked that we would bring up The Matrix every time we talked about Tom Hanks taking a piss. Which I guess would only be 4 times. But, there is a lot of piss in this movie. I just feel like indebted to some of our listeners that we haven't covered The Matrix yet. I'm so sorry. I thought Nick was going to pick it. But yeah, there is some gritty, gross looking green in this movie that does make me think of The Matrix, at least. So at least we have that.
It's not gross looking to me, though. It's like my favorite color. That green.
Well, it's gross in that it's like in this prison and it's like kind of faded and I don't know, wonky and stuff. So,
and look, we have a theme for next year, so we're not going to get to The Matrix for a little while, but I promise we're going to cover it. It's one of my all-time favorites. I love it. We're going to cover The Matrix one day, I promise. I'm sorry we did not cover it this year. I know a lot of people expected that. It just, somehow it didn't happen.
All right, so Neo's walking down the Green Mile, and then what happens?
All right, so we get introduced to our 4 main characters on the mile. So I read the book, too. I prepped. I had never read the book. When I worked at Walmart, we had all the little novellas that made up this story, because Stephen King wrote this story out as novellas so that people couldn't just skip straight to the end and find out what happened. Apparently, he didn't even know what happened at the end when he started writing these. And I saw these there, and I thought, that looks really interesting. And I'd always look at the back of the books, and I never read it until last month. And I think one of my major qualms with the book, which I loved, I thought the book was great, and this is a very faithful adaptation of that. But in the book, these 4 guards, outside of Tom Hanks's character, Paul Edgecombe, and David Morris's character, Brutus, I just kept getting them mixed up because they didn't really have strong personality traits. And I think with the actors here, they set themselves apart a bit more just because you're physically looking at them.
Right.
So you have Tom Hanks as the guy who's the lead on the mile, playing Paul Edgecombe. You got David Morris, a gigantic man. This guy's so tall. He was basically the same size as Michael Clark Duncan, and they had to make him look shorter than he was.
Right.
Playing Brutus Brutal Howell. Then you have Jeffrey DeMunn as Harry Terwilliger. Jordan, I gotta tell you, two of my favorite movies. Oh, damn, I just spoiled my opinion on this movie. Two of my favorite movies from 1999 are Stephen King adaptations starring Harry Terwilliger. He's in Storm of the Century, which was basically a television miniseries that Stephen King wrote, not as a book. He wrote this as a television miniseries script, and it came to television earlier that year. And it's longer than The Green Mile. It's 3 2-hour-long episodes, but it's amazing. I think it's perfect. I think it's the best television miniseries, at least horror miniseries ever made. And I think that Jeffrey DeMunn is brilliant in it. And he's here as Harry Terwilliger, who is the older guard on the block.
Always polishing his glasses.
Yes, and kind of scowling a little bit at things that are happening.
Very concerned looking throughout, but doesn't have much to do, really.
Right, he's just kind of
He does get peed on.
He gets peed on, that's right. And then our young guy on the block, and the most emotional of the group, is Dean Stanton, who's played by Barry Pepper. Jordan. The sniper's back.
Barry Pepper from Saving Private Ryan. Oh, yeah.
That's right. Reunited, and it feels so good. Hanks reunites with people from other movies from his career multiple times here. And I love Barry Pepper in this.
Yeah, he's really good.
Yeah, he's great. Late 90s Barry Pepper is peak Barry Pepper. He's great in this movie.
Put some pepper on that mile. I don't know why I said that.
I don't know why either. I think he wanted to see him shoot more Nazis from Saving Private Ryan. He's so good in that. He's totally different here, though. He doesn't shoot anybody.
He gets almost strangled at one point.
He does.
By Sam Rockwell, who I also love.
Oh, man, Sam Rockwell. Rounding out the guards, though, you have Doug Hutchinson as Percy Whitmore, who's our evil villain here. This part that he plays perfectly. He's so slimy in here.
He's so slimy in this. Really effective. Love to hate him. Love to see him get his comeuppance. Well done as far as the narrative goes. Just building and building and building to gets under your skin. Does very cruel and unnecessary things.
So you have a bunch of characters there that the movie keeps track of pretty easily.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you also have all the people who are on the mile as prisoners.
That is true. I mean, I feel like we should point out how effortless all that feels in the setup. So, yeah, and getting to know each of those characters and then each of the inmates, too. Talking about the inmates, I love Michael Jeter in this. I think he was also in Patch Adams. I don't know if that was the same year or the year before as one of the kooky guys there. But tell me if I'm wrong. Best Cajun accent in a movie by a non-Cajun actor?
He does a great job. Patch Adams was the year before this. And yes, he was from Tennessee. I loved him as a kid in the series Evening Shade with Burt Reynolds. God, he was so funny in that show. He played Herman Stiles. He was supposed to be an assistant football coach, which the joke was that the school was basically so hurting on funds that they had to get Michael Jeter to be an assistant football coach.
Nice.
He's so great in that. And he's usually such like a little squirrely, squeaky guy. And he has like so much pathos in this part with this great Cajun accent.
Yeah, he brings so much to the film. Like, I wouldn't say it hinges on him or anything, but yeah, it's just, he adds so much character, so much flavor to it. And yeah, like you said, pathos, where you don't even really know like what most of these inmates have done to be on death row. I mean, we don't ever really get to know what he did. I don't know. I feel like you just immediately like him. There's just like a lot of empathy for all these guys being in this situation. Obviously, I feel like that's portrayed through Tom Hanks the most. He does that so well in so many of his roles, like just being kind of like the fatherly, kind-hearted leader type character, same as he does in Saving Private Ryan. But Michael Jeter as Dale Delacroix. Is it Dale Delacroix?
It's Edward Dale Delacroix. Dale is his nickname.
Edward Dale Delacroix. Yeah, that's right. They call him Dale throughout the movie. Then you also have, I don't know the character's name, but Native American.
It's Graham Greene as Arlen Bitterbuck.
That's right. Graham Greene. That's right. The author himself.
Graham Greene is a fantastic actor. He's in a lot of stuff. You might have recognized him from Dances with Wolves. He's in Die Hard with a Vengeance, Jordan. He's in Misery. He's in a lot of stuff. Really good. He's got a smaller role here. He's basically here for two reasons. to give you a beautiful monologue about the happiest moment of his life.
Oh, that was a great monologue. Yeah.
So he talks about basically the best moment in his life.
I know he talked about his bare-breasted young wife.
That's the only boobs you get in this movie is Graham Greene talking about him.
That's the only thing I remember.
Well, what I really like about his monologue, it takes on an importance later in the film where he talks about basically living in that moment. That was the best moment of his life, earlier in his life when he just married his wife. And it's really beautiful. And it reflects on the ending that befalls Tom Hanks's character at the end of the movie, where he's kind of living in the opposite of that, unfortunately.
It's also like an early indication of the spirituality that this film is going to tackle, right? Because he asked Tom Hanks, if you've really repented for your sins, do you feel like when you die, you'd go back to the best moment of your life and just live that moment again forever? And he describes getting married and living out on the mountain, I think, with his young wife, and they'd made love every night, and she'd lay bare-breasted by the firelight and all this stuff.
Yeah, and they talk all night afterward until the morning.
They talk all night afterwards, yeah. So it's not all just about the bare breast. And Tom Hanks is basically like, yeah, I nearly believe something very, very similar how he responds. So yeah, like it establishes that Tom Hanks is perhaps a deeper thinking spiritual man than just like this prison guard. And this guy is about to be sent off to death row. Obviously, he's like repentant and thinking carefully about the afterlife. So yeah, I like that it brings all that into play like early on with his character. And then we see the obvious different shades of that with some of the other inmates, especially Sam Rockwell being the antithesis of any deep thinking spiritual person.
Right. And it shows you the empathy of his character as well, because for everyone that he has to execute, he has this moment where he's basically just helping them to feel better and putting them at peace. And going along with what they're saying. And this also is a brilliant way of teaching you the rules of an execution, because it's a character that you haven't really got to know well. He hasn't been in the movie for long, but you see what happens when someone's executed, the steps that are involved, everything that has to take place for the execution to go, I don't want to say well, but to go down properly, so that you can see what does not go well in the second execution following this up. You get 3 executions here.
What do you think about their rehearsal before that, where we see they bring in Harry Dean Stanton as Toot Toot, one of the convicts. I guess he's also a projectionist when they go to the movies later in the prison. At first I thought maybe he was just like the janitor or somebody that they brought in to do this.
In the book, he's the snack cart guy. So you know how they're always like chowing down on snacks, the guards? He's the guy that sells them the snacks. He has like a cart, but he's very vulgar. Basically,
right.
He's just a really vulgar person. He's supposed to be kind of like the antithesis of the nobility that you see around with the other guards and characters. Though he is cracking them up all the time.
Yeah, and I guess they don't establish who he is that well here, other than, oh, we're going to bring in this grungy-looking Harry Dean Stanton to do the rehearsal. And I don't know, I just find him really humorous. I love Harry Dean in anything that he's in, pretty much. And yeah, he adds a nice little flavor and humor to the scenario. And I guess maybe that's intentional too, where it's like, okay, we're doing this procedural rehearsal of an execution, but let's bring in this guy that kind of like lightens things up and is real absurd and vulgar and totally not fitting the situation.
Yeah, for such a heavy movie, there are a lot of fun little light moments. And when they filmed this, they built this entire magnificent Green Mile set, and the actors and crew basically just lived on it. The movie went over schedule. They were there for a very long time, to where it felt like they were all in prison. So if you watch the full version of Walking the Mile, which the one on your VHS, I think is 21 minutes long. I don't think they released the full version until 2014. If you're looking for that extra, it's on YouTube, the full version. It's actually like 100 minutes long, but it's brilliant.
Wow. Okay.
And you can see them all like having to be humorous so that they don't just feel like in this oppressive environment, like totally downtrodden. And that's also where you see like, oh yeah, I forgot. Tom Hanks started out as a comedic actor because when they're not rolling, he's just cutting up the entire time.
Yeah. Well, we talked about Tom Hanks pissing. Well, we did talk a little bit about him having the dick on fire, but yeah, basically he has a urinary tract infection or a bladder infection. We basically are introduced to his character struggling to pee in the bathroom. I basically wanted to joke and make like a fake trailer for this movie that just included like the moments of him struggling to pee and then having relief when he finally gets to pee. It's like that being the movie. Like in a world where a prison guard struggles to piss and a new inmate with a special gift touches his junk and helps him please his wife once more.
Well, let's talk about that inmate. It's John Coffey. He gets delivered on a prison truck. They see the truck arrive and are like, oh man, the back axles are broken. Look how that thing's hanging down. And then he gets out of it. And then the truck immediately rises back up because he's supposed to be this enormous, like 6'9" mountain of a man. And he looks like it through the movie. This is Michael Clarke Duncan's like first real starring role. Like he had a bit part in Armageddon. It's insane that this was the first time he really got to star in a movie. And this is what he did.
He's great. I think he's awesome. Obviously, huge presence. I think he plays the character very well. And obviously, they're all just in awe of this man's size. But then, yeah, like as we get in the details of his character, very, really interesting character.
Definitely. He is brilliant here. I went and looked at the Oscar nominations and wins because, you know, I quit watching the year before this when Saving Private Ryan lost to Shakespeare in Love. And I realized that the entire thing was rigged to whatever Harvey Weinstein wanted it to be. So I was like, this is garbage. I give up on this crap. But I went back and looked. So, you know, my boy Haley Joel Osment was in The Sixth Sense. He put on like the greatest child performance in history in that movie.
Right.
So I thought, well, he had to have been nominated. He probably should have won because that was like a virtuoso performance. And then watching this, I was like, geez, man, Michael Clarke Duncan was amazing in this. He should have won too. And I look and see they're both nominated. And they lost to Michael Caine for The Cider House Rules. Jordan, have you ever seen The Cider House Rules?
Yeah, that's not my favorite movie.
That movie is garbage. That movie sucks. And Michael Caine,
you suck.
he can be a great actor. It's the most routine Michael Caine performance I've ever seen in a movie. There's nothing remarkable about it whatsoever.
It definitely felt like he's earned it, we should give it to him kind of thing.
But it's garbage because he had already won one before that point. Why give him another one for this?
Yeah.
It's like someone new comes in and he doesn't fit the bill. You know, he's like enormous, gigantic ex-bodyguard in like his first lead starring role, or he's a young virtuoso kid that's a better actor than most of the adults. So it's like, we're not going to give it to you. Forget you. We'll just give it to this performance by this named noted thespian, and we'll just give it to him. And
you're not part of the Hollywood elite, man.
Yeah, it's
Get
garbage.
Out of here.
It's the worst, and that movie is garbage. It's like a 3 out of 10 movie to me. It's like the ultimate, like, we have a message to share with you plebes in middle America movie, and it sucks. I hate that movie.
Yeah.
It's a joke. What a joke.
I will say, eat a Dorito for every time Michael Clarke Duncan says boss in this movie, and you'll have gone through a bag of Doritos.
You'll be as big as Michael Clarke Duncan.
Yeah, that's right. Eat a Dorito for every time Tom Hanks takes a piss. That's like 4 Doritos, but still, that's a lot of piss for one movie.
Yep. And we have one other inmate, and you already mentioned him. It's Sam Rockwell as Wild Bill Warden.
Wild Bill.
You love this guy, right?
I mean, he sucks. He's got the worst teeth in cinema history, maybe. His teeth are so rotten and dirty looking. I love Sam Rockwell. He obviously brings a lot of energy and humor and interest to the film. I mean, he's a terrible guy. he pisses on your old boy Harry at one point. The moon pie joke where he just covers David Morrison moon pie later on is pretty funny, but he's also just kind of annoying at the same time. So I don't know. It's like I kind of love to hate him, just like Percy.
You know what's nuts? This was really kind of the first thing that I saw him in. And he was in a lot of stuff after this. Like the early 2000s is just littered with Sam Rockwell performances. He was all over the place.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's a great actor, for sure.
He is, but he left such a strong impression on me for this, and this being my first experience of him, that I hated him. I was like, I hate this dude.
This guy sucks.
Yeah.
Right.
Really took me until just recent years to be like, all right, he's a good actor. Like, I'll give him that.
Yeah.
But I still hate him just because I believe he's this part that he played in this movie.
Yeah. He sinks into it. I mean, especially if you don't know this actor coming into this movie, then it's just like, oh, there's just that guy. There's just Wild Bill. I like how they pick him up from the mental institution and he's pretending that he's been drugged. Or is it the hospital? I don't know. Or mental hospital, whatever. They bring him back, and then, as soon as they get him into the death row cell block, he's just going wild and starts busting up everybody, strangling everybody. And John Coffey warned him, he's like, hey, watch out. Be careful, boss.
Yeah, he could sense it coming. Well, the book kind of follows in the novellas in that it's not necessarily episodic, but there are major events that happen that build upon each other. And the first, Jordan, is the pissin'.
The pissin'.
This is where we find out that John Coffey has a gift, and it comes right after the scene you just said, where everybody's getting rocked by Sam Rockwell. He's knocking everybody down. And the problem is that Tom Hanks is he said before, this is the worst urinary infection I've ever had in my life. And he's just had his worst attempt at taking a piss yet, where he falls down on his knees in his yard and he's like crying. It's tough to watch. It hurt my wiener.
I mean, is it tough to watch? I found it really funny, honestly. Just the noises that Tom Hanks is making in that scene, and like the blocking of like he's running to the outhouse and he's like, and then he can't make it and he falls down on his knees, and you just see Tom Hanks in his like 1930s pajamas and his like little stream of pee like squirting out over the yard and all the noises he's making. Like, that would definitely be in my trailer of like Tom Hanks taking a piss and then finally getting relief.
Jordan, you're going to love this then. In the Walking the Mile documentary, they show the outtakes from that, where when he finished and they yelled cut, he just kept going. And he goes, my dick, it's too big. It's so big it hurts. My dick is too big. And he just keeps going and going. And everyone's having a heart attack laughing at him. So
that's amazing. Yeah, I love it.
That's crazy. He was doing stuff like that the entire movie. It's wild. Right. So, Jordan, I think that his urinary tract infection has like symbolic value.
Please enlighten me.
So I think that Paul Edgecombe has a malaise, and that's that he has this internalized guilt from executing all of these people. I think that like the moral weight of that has been bearing down on him. And it's like a sickness from the inside. And I think that this urinary tract infection is just like a physical embodiment of that. And I think that really the miracle that he's gifted in this movie by John Coffey goes beyond him healing him of the urinary tract infection when, like you said, he grabs his junk. He just straight up grabs it. And another gag that Tom Hanks did was he got an empty water bottle and jammed it in his pants. Because apparently Michael Clark Duncan was like, I don't really want to like grab your junk for real. That's kind of strange. And then he put a water bottle there for him to grab.
I kill people so my dick don't work.
I think that not only is the miracle that he cures him of that, it's also that when he executes John Coffey at the end, that the whole experience has freed him from ever having to execute anyone again, because he immediately quits and he's done with it. So he's kind of healed of the physical and the spiritual malaise there in a way. But also, Jordan, since John Coffey's initials are JC and he's an obvious Christ metaphor, which is made explicit if you read a few interviews Darabont did. One of Jesus's earlier miracles is that a woman who's having an issue of blood, aka she's bleeding from her private parts and has been doing so for 10 years, and he heals her of that. That's like one of the first miracles. This is kind of a gender flip version of that miracle in a way.
Right.
So yeah, Jordan. But it's really funny too, I guess.
But it's really funny when he pees in the yard and John Coffey touches his junk.
Yeah. He thought it was funny, so.
All right, what's next?
So next you got Mr. Jingles.
Mr. Jingles. That's Tom Hanks's name for his wiener, right?
And Mr. Jingles is also a mouse.
Oh, burn, Tom Hanks. Your dick's not big. Like a little bit of mouse.
Oh.
I was going for Delacroix. Was like, you pee your pants like a little baby.
Well, we have a mouse on the block, the best mouse in a movie, in my opinion. Mr. Jingles. He just shows up one day and they start feeding him. And then he runs straight to Edward Delacroix and becomes his best friend. He also feels kind of like a metaphorical, symbolic character. He's kind of like a symbol of purity, like the John Coffey character is.
He's a sugar mess mouse.
What'd you think about the mouse, Jordan? Not Tom Hanks's mouse. I mean, Mr. Jingles' the mouse.
Mr. Jingles? We're talking about the mouse's dick now?
Not Mr. Jingles, Mr. Jingles.
Okay.
Just Mr. Jingles.
Okay. See, we thought this episode was going to be heavy. Come on now. No, the mouse is a nice little touch, lighthearted, humorous touch. And like we said, it gives a little different flavor to Dale's character and kind of lets us empathize with him and brings in that pathos later on. It also just shows like how bored these prison guards are. They're like, look, there's a mouse. Let's feed it some crackers, see what happens,
Right. You know what's awesome, Jordan? In kindergarten, I caught a mouse by hand that was under my dad's pickup truck, and I brought him to school. And he went in the school terrarium, which my school is in the middle of a cane field in the middle of nowhere in Ponkey Parish. And the mouse busted out of the terrarium and then terrorized the school.
That's awesome.
And then the janitor spent the rest of the year trying to catch him because he kept like eating through the cafeteria and stuff. So my kindergarten had like a little Mr. Jingles that I brought there.
Nice. Did he ever catch him?
Yeah.
You killed him?
Yeah, he killed him.
Oh man, I thought you were going to tell me he ran off to Mouseville.
I wish he ran off to Mouseville.
That dastardly janitor never caught Mr. Jingles.
The funny thing is I love the janitor. He lived in like a shack next to the school. He's a nice old guy.
Did he talk like Delacroix? Was he an old Cajun?
He was an old black fella named Mr. Jeffrey. And he was like, yeah, I had to put him down. He got in the cafeteria. He got in the school cereal supply. He was going through all of it. I was like, all right, I understand. I shouldn't have brought him to school. I should have kept him at home.
But he was a circus mouse, Mr. Jeffrey.
Yeah. And now he's dead.
Oh, so sad.
Yeah, so Jordan, the whole time that this is going on, you have the little side story here that Percy just really wants to be the person who executes someone. He got to be front and center whenever the Graham Greene character was executed, and now he's like, look, I want to be the person in front who orders the execution, because he's a sicko. He's just a total sicko. So he wants to do that, and at the same time, he's been building this feud with Edward Delacroix. He does not like him. He keeps doing mean things to him. They have a horrible relationship, and that really comes to a head whenever the first gasp-inducing in my audience moment happened, and that's whenever he stomps on Mr. Jingles, Jordan.
Yeah, that was rough. He also, we should mention, broke, 4 fingers in Dale's hand?
Yeah, before this happens, way earlier in the movie.
It's like the first scene that we see with Percy in the movie where he's kind of laughed at by the other guards, and then Dale laughs at him in turn, because he's the one that brings in Michael Clark Duncan. He's like, we got a dead man walking here, dead man. And obviously from the get-go, Tom Hanks is just not a fan. So he orders him off his block. But he's got, the governor's connections. He's like the nephew of the governor, and he's got all these connections. So he's just holding that over everybody's head the whole movie, which makes you just hate him even more. Good old Louisiana corruption and nepotism.
Yeah, they got the dirty politics thing in there. he smashed his hand earlier, and they have this ongoing feud, and he crunches poor Mr. Jingles. And you also have the moment where Percy wets his pants because he gets grabbed by Wild Bill, and Wild Bill threatens him, and he just pees on himself. And then Edward Delacroix laughs at him again for that.
That's right. That's where he says, "You wee yourself like a little baby."
Right. So they already have a feud going. But when he stomped on Mr. Jingles, my entire audience just went,
well, yeah, this is after the long build-up and conversation of them trying to prepare Del for his execution and what's going to happen to Mr. Jingles. Tom Hanks and David Morse start telling him they're going to bring Mr. Jingles to the circus, to the Mouseville down in Florida. And so they're just kind of trying to ease his mind a little bit. And after all that's like finally established, he throws a spool of like a twine spool or something that the mouse keeps rolling back to him. He throws it out of the cell. And so Mr. Jingles runs across the cell block, and that's when Percy gets his chance to stomp on him.
Right. Crushes him. And this is the moment where he leaves, and they've already made a deal. Well, they're about to make a deal. Sorry. So he leaves the room, and John Coffey says the word that you love that he says. He says, "Boss."
Boss.
Bring it to me before it's too late.
Give me some of that cornbread, boss. No, that's not what he says.
Oh, we should. Yeah, we missed a scene though. You probably want to talk about actually involving the cornbread. But yeah, he brings the mouse to John Coffey.
Oh, that's right, because he brings the cornbread. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
And John Coffey brings the mouse back to life. But yeah, Jordan, the cornbread comes from Bonnie Hunt, who's great in this.
Like, how could we skip over this though? How could we skip over this? Because after he touches Tom Hanks' junk and heals his bodily functions, then he immediately goes home and just, it's like the funniest thing to me, where he's like, oh, my junk is healed. So he goes home and his wife's like doing the dishes, and he's like, the shot of just like her butt, like from his point of view, is so funny to me. He's like, "Oh, my waterworks done work now." But it's just so funny. It's just like that whole scene after that, just like the whole build up of like him going home, him taking off her apron, starting to kiss, and then like it's like nighttime, and we just see like the outside window of their house and hear them shagging. It's like, oh, and then it like cuts to the day, the morning, and it's still going on. It's like, what? This is a totally different movie. Like, where did this come from?
One of my favorite comments on YouTube ever is there's a comment about this scene where someone said it was a kid. He's like, I was watching this when I was like 13 or 14, and my parents just happened to call right at that moment, and they heard it in the background, and they were like, "What are you watching? Is that porn?" And he was like, "No, it's The Green Mile. It's an Oscar-nominated film starring Tom Hanks." And they're like, sure it is.
Sure.
And apparently he showed his parents the movie later. They watched it together, but that became like a running joke where every time something happened, there'd be like, "What were you doing? Watching The Green Mile?"
Watching has code for porn now.
Right. You were in the bathroom a long time. Were you watching The Green Mile again?
Yep, 3 hours.
Yeah, and then she's so happy she makes a big thing of cornbread for John Coffey.
Was your missus pleased, boss? Oh, very much. Several times, yes. It's just so bad. It's so bad. Oh, so good, though.
Yep, and he shares it with Del, but he doesn't share it with anybody else.
Doesn't share it with Wild Bill, for
That's
sure.
Right, he doesn't. But flash forward, and Mr. Jingles gets healed, and a really, really angry Tom Hanks and a really angry David Morse go find stupid Percy, who's shined in the electric chair, and they grab him and pin him down. And they're like, "Look, we know you put in a transfer request to the mental hospital. You need to take it and get out of here. Like, you can be at the front when we execute Del, but then you gotta leave. You gotta promise to leave." And he's like, "Yeah, I'll leave."
What about the flies that come out of John Coffey's mouth when he heals somebody?
Yeah, so I'll just do my movie connection now. This is like the easiest connect. Like when you said The Mummy and I already knew I was going to pick The Green Mile, I was like, oh my gosh, thanks, Jordan. Easiest movie connection ever. So in The Mummy vomits out flies. It's amazing. He just roars flies out of his mouth. Incredible shot by Stephen Sommers in The Mummy. Here you have Michael Clarke Duncan as John Coffey. 3 big scenes where he just vomits those flies right out, Jordan. And the flies just pour out of his mouth. They're spiritual flies.
Didn't they just, kind of dissipate in the air as everybody stares?
Right, because they're not like real physical flies. They're like the embodiment of like sin and evil and darkness that he's sucking out of people.
Right.
That he's taking back from them, basically, as he says. Yeah, so that's my connection, Jordan.
I sucked out your pee-pee infection and turned it into flies, boss.
Yeah, if there's another movie where someone vomits out flies from 1999, I'm sorry we didn't cover it, but I am glad that we covered these 2 back to back.
Wait, what's the other one?
Well, The Mummy, Jordan. I'm saying if there's a third one, I'd like to know.
Yeah, I thought you said there's another one. Like there's a third one, but okay.
I'm sure I said it wrong. I'm just going to take the blame for that. My bad. Yeah, there's only 2 I know of. I want there to be a third one. What if in Beowulf, Christopher Lambert also vomited out flies?
Or, have the Grendel mother do it at the end before she turns into a giant spider thing.
Yeah, like what if her boobs were full of flies?
That's why they didn't show them to us. It's just been too much.
Too much. We went too far this time.
Flies coming out of the nipples. Just wrong.
That movie had a $20 million budget, Jordan.
So they say.
Right, The Green Mile only had a $60 million budget. So for just 3 times the budget of Beowulf, you could get The Green Mile.
Could have made 3 Beowulfs. Damn.
So then you go to the execution of Del Delacroix. Horrific scene. Jeez.
Oh, man.
This already traumatized the audience. You're only halfway through the movie, and I think half the audience was just emotionally done by this point. Stupid Percy knows because he's been told, and we've been shown that he was told, you gotta wet the sponge and put it on their head to conduct the electricity. If you don't, it's gonna be real bad. So he fakes like he dips the sponge and then puts it on Dell's head dry.
The worst death. The worst death on screen. But it's pretty gnarly at the same time. I mean, like, him frying and then, like, the flames coming out of his skull and stuff. Pretty sick looking. But yeah, also traumatic and terrible and sad.
Yeah, it's like an insane combination of just like horrible sadness, and it's compounded whenever Percy tells him right before he gets electrocuted that, hey, Mouseville's fake. Like, your stupid mouse isn't going to Mouseville.
Knowing that you're about to die and like your nemesis right in front of you telling you that kind of shit. And then like when he starts to fry and it stinks up the place and like all the townspeople are stampeding each other to try and get out of the room. That was pretty gnarly too.
It was. And I like right before they turn it on that Michael Jeter learned to say Hail Marys in Cajun French. And he's just repeating that. That's like the last thing he has.
That's awesome.
But yeah, everyone's running up because they're all excited, right? Because in the book, he basically like raped and killed a kid, like a girl, and then I think put her in a building and then burned the building down. And basically the way that King describes it as like he had one awful act in him and he did that and then that was it. So it's supposed to be like he did something awful, and if anyone deserves the death penalty, he probably does. But at the same time, like, he otherwise would have just sat in this cell and played with this mouse for the rest of his life.
Right.
Yeah, so it's horrific. And then again, the craft here. So Jordan, they made an animatronic version of Michael Jeter, pretty gnarly, that they could set on fire. So you have this animatronic that looks real. I mean, because it's covered in the mask that eventually burns off his face. And
yeah.
Man, yeah, it's horrific. And you can smell it. Like, because everyone is talking about the smell and the smoke is on screen. It's pretty insane. I think that Darabont was off screen smoking a cigar just to add more smoke to the scene.
This scene needs more smoke. Pull out a stogie real quick.
Yeah, it's horrific. And my audience was gasping like the audience that was trying to get out of the room, and the doors were locked so they couldn't, so they're trapped in there.
It feels very much like a Stephen King touch.
Oh, yeah.
To have that kind of scenario play out the way it does. I also was thinking how Stephen King must have a thing for like people in prison with animals as well. Because you think about Shawshank and the bird, like Jake and the old man. And then here you have Mr. Jingles.
Shawshank, I feel like, is incredibly improved by Darabont. There are so many things in the movie that he added in his screenplay that aren't in the book, and I can't remember if the bird is in there or not.
Yeah, the bird was in the book, because I read the book recently.
Yeah, it's just a little novella. Well, it's different seasons, so it's like 4 little novellas in one book.
Yeah.
Been forever since I read it. Well, you then cut to his brutalized face. It's a really horrific image, especially considering Michael Jeter was, even on set, they said, like, he was like the soul of the production. And he said whenever they're making it, I don't know if you saw this, but they filmed the movie chronologically.
Oh, I didn't see that.
So it was like anytime someone died, it was like, he even said it himself. It's like, I feel like I'm dying. Like, this is just going to keep going on without me now. And they're going to think about me for a little while and miss me and then forget about me.
Yeah. That's really sad.
It was a bummer. And I always forget what his speaking voice sounds like, because he always had like a different voice for every character. And his speaking voice is so soft, it's kind of shocking and jarring to hear it, especially saying such sad things. So it's a bummer. And we haven't mentioned the tallest character in the movie, but they had to try to make him look shorter than Michael Clark Duncan. It's James Cromwell as the warden, Hal Morris.
Yeah.
James Cromwell from Babe. He's like 8 feet tall in real life. So
That'll do, babe.
He's a nice guy here, but he busts in the room and is like, what the hell happened? And thankfully they're able to say, like, Percy messed up. It was his fault, and he's leaving. They got him now. Like, he's gone.
I like how Tom Hanks diffuses the situation with humor there. Is it that scene, or?
No, you're right. It is there, and it's almost exactly from the book, too. He does, because Sam Rockwell sings. Whenever he hears Del frying and in pain, he starts singing along to it. And everyone who's in the room that's freaking out can hear him singing, and it makes it worse. And then Tom Hanks is like, can he carry a tune?
Right. And the shots of Sam Rockwell, like, just going batshit in his cell are pretty great. Where he's like, there's like a metal grate, I guess, above his cell that he's hanging on. He's like looking up at the camera as the camera's looking down. And he's just like, he's frying now, boys.
Right. And he rips all the feathers out of his pillow, blowing them everywhere. Yeah, it's crazy.
He does sing like a little kind of clever tune. I forget what he says, but he makes something rhyme with Delacroix.
Barbecue, me and you, stinky pinky, pew pew pew. Where Billy, Jilly, Hilly, our pa, it was a French fried Cajun named Delacroix. Woo!
And the warden character becomes pretty important because his wife is unfortunately dying of cancer. She has an enormous tumor in her brain. She's played by Louisiana's own Patricia Clarkson. So she actually is a native Louisianian.
There you go.
And she plays his wife, Melinda. And we get to see her in a minute. She becomes a major plot point in the movie, even though she's only in the movie for a few moments. And that's where the movie goes after this. It's that now Jeter's gone. Del Delacroix is gone. The only people that you have left on the block now are Wild Bill and John Coffey. And you have a sit-down lunch with all the prison guards where they talk about everything that's happened. And Tom Hanks is like, we got to take him to go heal the warden's wife.
Yeah, and this is pretty much the beginning. It feels like the beginning of the third act. Like, we've had a pretty... this is what, like, our 2+ hours into the movie. We've had pretty extensive time with all these other characters and gone through all these kind of mini arcs with all the inmates, which I really enjoy. And I wanted to point out, too, with the warden character, I like that it's a little twist from King's other work with Shawshank, where we have, like, the really evil warden character there. Here we have like just a really sad James Cromwell who's upset about his wife dying, and he seems to, be like a genuinely good-hearted guy that supports Tom Hanks. So I like that there's a difference there.
That was a point of the piece, was that outside of Percy, these prison guards are really moral men, which is the whole point of the ending, is to show you like what happens when these really moral guys who really kind of become better men throughout the movie have to do something awful at the end. Oh, and also Lieutenant Dan's in this. Forgot to mention.
Oh yeah, Gary Sinise.
Yeah, Tom Hanks goes,
Sinise.
After his junk gets healed, he's like, there's no way this guy killed these girls. He healed my junk. So he goes up to talk to I believe it was the lawyer for John Coffey, and he's played by Lieutenant Dan, and he has this talk with him where he basically makes this comparison to like the dog that they had, where he never did anything bad, and then all of a sudden he look at what he did to my son. And you get this reveal as these really gothic shots of his two children were playing out on the swing in their yard. And the son walks up. And again, kind of the way this movie underplays things, even with the music, I feel like a lot of movies would have the kid turn his head and you'd see that he has no right eyeball anymore. It would be like bump, like it'd be a stinger.
Dun,
right?
dun, dun.
And that doesn't happen. It's very subtle.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We also didn't talk about William Sadler and John Coffey's, like the flashback to John Coffey holding the two dead girls, like why John Coffey has been incarcerated. Obviously, I think longtime listeners will know we love William Sadler. Talked about him in the Demon Knight episode. Talked about him in the Bill and Ted episode.
Death.
But yeah, he's great in here. I mean, just the opening shot of this movie, the slow-mo and the fields as we see William Sadler's face screaming, no audio present. He's just like running through the field with his shotgun in his overalls. Pretty awesome. Love that opening. But yeah, he's the very distraught father of these two girls that have gone missing, and they find John Coffey cradling both of their bloody bodies and him just yelling, I tried to take it back, but it was too late.
Yep, and no one knows what he means. Also, very noteworthy, Sadler also played the lovable Haywood from The Shawshank Redemption.
There you go. Yeah, another connection.
Yep, another player that's brought back here. And I think that Jeffrey DeMunn was the prosecutor in The Shawshank Redemption.
That's right, yeah.
They talk about it and they realize like it would be really wrong if we could heal Melinda and we don't. So no matter what happens, we got to figure out a way to make that happen. And they figure out the best way to do this would be to bring John Coffey to Melinda in the dead of night. They're going to leave Barry Pepper there because he's young and he still has young kids and their kids are all grown. Or in the case of David Morris's Brutus, he doesn't have any kids. So they drug Sam Rockwell. They give him a Coke that's just laced with a bunch of downers and he passes out. You have, Percy he's still there because, he's put in his transfer, but he hasn't left yet. It's not time for him to leave quite yet. So they put him in a straitjacket and they throw him in the padded room.
Which is really satisfying. I just love how this whole procedure unfolds. I will say, I guess, kind of the elephant in the room for me at this point, talking about John Coffey's character. One thing that bothers me, I mean, okay, so obviously you have the magic Negro trope here, which, maybe that doesn't bother you. Maybe it does.
I don't think it's here.
You don't think it's here?
No, the entire gist of that trope is that character is just there to help the white character.
Yeah.
So, he's not teaching Tom Hanks to play golf here.
Like Legend of Bagger Vance.
Right. He's a fully realized character who's not only central to the story, but a central character who has a full arc and who I think the audience most closely empathizes with.
But is he not here just to help the white man, just like you're talking about? Like, how that is very present to me.
Well, he helps everybody. He helps, and throughout his life has helped everybody.
Well, I was going to say, the part about this, how it unfolds, that does bother me is like, we don't have a scene of these men like asking John Coffey if he would want to use his gift in this way, or they see that every time he does heal somebody, he's like really tired and has to just go lay down. I don't know. It's just like the assumption on their part of like, oh, you know what? My good friend, his wife is sick. Let's get this guy. Let's use this guy to heal her. Like, there's no real like conversation about like, hey, John, do you want to do this? So I don't know.
Did you miss the part where John said that before they could even talk to him about it, that he wanted to go see the lady?
He anticipates it. Yeah. Like,
it's something that he wanted to do. And we've seen later that when something serious is going on, they want to have a conversation with him about it. And he also anticipates that conversation and tells them we don't even need to have that conversation, just like they didn't have to have this one. But the other one has a lot more finality.
I find a good bit of all that a little problematic, but
Did you just say problematic, you bastard?
It is. Yeah, yes, I did. I did say that word, and that is how I feel. So thank you very much. I mean, all that feels like a little, it's just tainted a little bit, a little icky, but overall it doesn't derail the movie for me. It's just,
if he was white, would you be fine with everything that happens in the movie?
I mean, it wouldn't have the same kind of like cultural baggage that the Magic Negro trope does have.
Who gives that baggage though? Someone noticed that in Bagger Vance, the black character in the movie doesn't function as anything but an assistant to the white character. So that person invented that trope based on something that happens in another movie. It doesn't happen in this movie. You have a character that's full of depth here. So who cares what color he is? Like when they made the movie, they explicitly said, and I think Michael Clark Duncan will go along with this in the film, but we can't ask him because he's dead, that race wasn't the point here. The only time that race comes into play as part of the story, him being like an enormous 6'9" black man holding the two girls, kind of takes away like any defense that he could possibly mount. Like he's immediately rendered guilty, but I don't think the race comes into play at all for the rest of the movie. This guy is such a simpleton. He can't defend himself. And
I know that King had said as much, like when there was criticisms there that, the only reason he made him black was to think realistically, how would he get the death penalty for what he did? And like for the place that it's set in and for the time period, like, yeah, if he's black, then it's more likely that he would have gotten the death penalty at that time. I'm not trying to see this through like some PC lens or whatever. It's just, it's more of just like the awareness of like, okay, why is that something that's like a trope that people have noticed? And it's just like trying to see this from the perspective of somebody who is black and is like, oh, this black man has this special gift is used by these white, not only like, the history of like black people being incarcerated, like, the baggage of that playing in, but it's like using his gift to heal all like these white people and then to be killed in the end. It's like, and then like for the good guys who do kill him to kind of get off in the end because he's like, oh, it's okay. I kind of want to die.
You think Tom Hanks gets off in the end?
Okay. Yeah. There's added layers to him like not getting off in the end, but at least the moral dilemma of like, I really don't want to kill one of God's miracles. Oh, don't worry about it. I everything sucks and I kind of want to die anyway. Like it's an easy out in that regard, at least.
All right. Well, you said your piece. I disagree with you 100%.
All right.
100% is the most you can disagree, I guess. But if you could go to 200, I'd go to 200.
This is how Filmshake ends right here. Another fight. We thought we had remedied our woes against each other, but I guess not.
Yeah, I mean, if the character was white, the movie wouldn't be any different than if he was black.
I mean, it does work to a large degree, him being black, because I mean that adds in like other layers, like within the time period and like how they relate to John Coffey.
So are you saying him being black helps the movie?
I mean, I said from the get-go that I had conflicting feelings about a lot of things. So it's like, I don't know. It's just weird. I don't know. It's like, I think it works that he is like this big, black man, and how the prejudice of the times would play in him getting the death penalty, obviously. But, and like him, just like not having any way to defend himself. But yeah, then there's just like the Magic Negro trope thing that just sticks out a little bit to me, where I'm just like, it makes this feel a little icky. But like I said, it doesn't like totally derail everything for me. And I think like for the large part, like things in this story are like well executed and work. It's just like, I don't know.
You know what? The reason that you stated are the same reason that I don't like Christopher Nolan's Prestige, because of the magical honky.
The magical honky.
Yeah, the magical honky trope. I just can't get past the magical honky trope in the Prestige, so that movie sucks.
I didn't say this movie sucks. I just said I found that aspect of
It's problematic.
To be unsettling. Yeah.
Every time that someone has magical, like The Sixth Sense.
You yourself are the anti-magic realism person, so you should hate this most of all, right?
I can't get over The Sixth Sense. Like, Haley Joel Osment is so good, but I can't get over the magical honky kid trope. Just the cracker kid, magical cracker kid, can't get over it. Can't get over it. Sorry. Nah, I think that's silly. I mean, but if you know what, do you feel that way? You feel that way.
Yep.
Groovy.
Well,
what did you think? Okay, so he asked if they're going to go see the woman. So there are a few things here that start adding some depth to just like what his character might be. First of all, they go outside, and there are a couple things here that are different from the book. One thing is that in the book, he sees the electric chair because they have to go through that room, and he can feel the souls of everyone who was ever electrocuted in it. And it's a really powerful moment, which they cut from here. I think probably so that when he sees the chair when he gets executed, that it's more of a shock. You know, that moment is more a moment unto itself.
Yeah.
So I get why they removed that, but that is something that's cool in the book there. But he gets outside and looks up and sees the stars. And there's something about the way that he notices Cassiopeia that just feels really ancient. Like, this guy was alive when people only had stars to navigate by.
Yeah, that is a really touching moment. This whole scene of them sneaking through the woods and like when he picks up the leaves and smells them. I mean, all that makes sense in the fact that he's been in prison for however long, and now he's like getting to see the stars for the first time in a while and getting to like smell the leaves and everything. But like you said, yeah, there's almost like this mythic quality about it too, which is, I don't know, it's a nice touch.
Yes, and I like the childlike innocence there where he's like picking up and smelling the leaves, and he's like passing them to the guards. Like he's like, smell this. Like the look on his face there, it's so like pure and innocent.
I love the look on Tom Hanks and David Moore's face, how like, just like, huh? But they also like, at this point, they're just like, go along with it. They are open. They're more open to like his sense of wonder, his sense of magic or whatever.
Yeah. And you got the beautiful Thomas Newman score as the fireflies start swirling around them, almost like he's like brought these fireflies to life around them. It's really magical, Jordan. I love this scene.
You love the magic.
Yeah. And they get to the house, and James Cromwell comes out. He's like, what are you doing out here?
He's got a shotgun.
Yeah, he's ready to go. And then you hear Patricia Clarkson talking in the background, and he's told them, like, she started to use, like, profanity. It's like words I don't know how she would even learn. And this is another change in the book. And I don't know how I feel about this. Like, all the changes I feel positive about. I guess long term it would have been maybe too much to add this in. But in the book, King kind of makes it to where it's more than just the tumor. It's like a spiritual battle here. Like, it's not just that she has this tumor in her mind. There's like some demonic force there as well that's transformed her. Cause she says some really foul stuff to him in the book that's not here. Like some extremely foul stuff. And if you want to get into race stuff, she says some racially charged stuff too. And it's not in the movie, but it's way more of like a spiritual battle in the book than it is here.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely get that vibe to a degree here.
Yeah, it's still there. Yeah,
it's still there. And I like this whole build up to them outside the house. You hear this kind of demonic yelling from her in her bed, and the kind of slow ascent up the stairs, and John Coffey like pushing aside James Cromwell and like, you just be quiet now. And then just going into her room, you know, because it just builds this anticipation of like, what are we about to get into now? I think this is really well done. But yeah, maybe they could have gone a little bit more extreme. It sounds like, yeah, I'm imagining King wrote some really foul stuff, but it's pretty tame here. You know, I think she says like, God damn it. And that's like the only curse word I can remember her saying.
Right as he's getting close to her and she sees him, she makes like this real evil face and she calls him a pig fuck. I think that's the worst thing she says.
Yeah.
I'm kind of into how it's more understated here because it fits the tone of the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
A lot of this is understated. So I also like that when his presence like actually interacts with hers, once he like gets past that line of defense, like she immediately softens. And again, like adding to like the myth around him and how old he might be. For the first time, anyone says, where'd you get all those scars? And then you just realize his body is just covered in scars everywhere. Not just like he was like whipped. Maybe he was a slave at some point in the past. Just like he's just been through like hundreds or maybe thousands of years of life.
And I like how he says, like, he doesn't remember. Like, he doesn't really know himself or where he came from or where these scars came from either.
Right. And then knowing what we know later in the movie about how he basically infects Tom Hanks and Mr. Jingles with life, he probably in some way is life to a degree to where like he's just been alive forever. He could have been alive like when the ancient Romans were alive.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. But then you have the scene where he heals her here, where he sucks all the evil out of her. I thought it was gnarly how they do show the clock downstairs stop, the old grandfather clock. And then there's like a little mini earthquake in the room.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty sweet. And I like the awkwardness of him like leaning down and getting his mouth like over her mouth, and her husband's right there, and he's this giant black man, and it's just all not comfortable for old James Cromwell, I'm sure. But yeah, it's just like this otherworldly force. You got to go along with it. I'm gonna suck them flies out of you, lady.
I love how he kisses her above the eye, like where the tumor probably is.
Ah, yeah,
first.
That's true.
And then he brings his mouth over hers, and then he sucks the flies out, but he doesn't spit them back out. But you do get this beautiful moment where he's like on his knees, like coughing, and they're like, wait, why didn't he cough the flies out? And finally Tom Hanks is like, why don't you stand up and talk to the lady for a second? And she looks like he's taken like age off of her. Like Patricia Clarkson like suddenly looks like 20 years younger. She's totally healed. She doesn't know what happened. But yeah. Oh man, that same year, she's in that really goofy romantic comedy that I told you about with the Miracle Crab.
Oh yeah. What's it called? It's like Irresistible with Sarah Michelle Gellar as the chef who has a miracle crab.
Yeah, the movie's called Simply Irresistible. Yeah, she has a magic crab who at one point wears a top hat. But man, if you're a fan of Patricia Clarkson's beauty, there's a moment near the end of the film where the dance that everyone is at gets turned into like a 1950s style dance. And she gets turned into like a 50s bombshell. And she just looks gorgeous in that movie and Simply Irresistible. So if you want to sit through a really weird romantic comedy with Sarah Michelle Gellar, who also looks great. In fact, her wardrobe person is listed in the opening credits right after the cast. Watch Simply Irresistible.
I'm going to watch it for the crab. I did go and watch parts of it for the crab already.
That crab is really good.
It's a good crab.
But did you like what she tells John Coffey here? It's like some really Stephen King dialogue.
I dreamed of you. I dreamed you were wandering in the dark. And so was I. And we found each other. We found each other in the dark.
Yeah, that whole moment was really touching and beautiful. And like you said, just like calling back to Jesus and, the healing of the women and the different gospels, like just this whole moment of like, yeah, like he's cast this evil spirit out of her. And now just seeing her jubilant and beautiful and thanking him in a way, even though she doesn't really remember what happened or know that he was the one that healed her.
Right. And I love that she gives him the St. Christopher's necklace too here.
For the patron saint of travelers, right?
Yeah, among other things. Yeah. So that was really cool.
Nice.
And then they head back to the prison and they're still like, wait, like he might die. Like he looks bad. He's not coughing up the flies. We might have to get like a crane to lift his dead body out of this field if we can't get him onto this truck. But they do.
Yeah. I mean, it makes you really concerned. Like, one, he's still got the flies in him. So I'm like really scared in that moment for him. Like, oh no, like John's going to take in this, again, going back to the trope, take in this white woman's disease and for these white men and kill himself. No, but I
honestly think that the existence of that trope being coined is itself racist. To be honest with you.
Possibly.
Yeah, I remember watching the movie and feeling the audience felt this way too. What's going to happen? You can't tell what's going to happen in this scene if you don't know what's going on. All of this feels extremely unpredictable. The next 10 minutes in the movie.
Yeah. No, and I enjoy that. You know, I am on the edge of my seat, like wondering, like, oh, is he going to die from this or what? And then, yeah, the very real possibility of these men getting caught and going to prison because of what they've done now, you know?
And they're all such decent men and so likable. Like, you don't want that either. And then what happens is kind of insane. So they go and they get Percy out of the padded room and they're like, don't talk. What stays in the mile? What happens in the mile stays in the mile. We won't tell anyone.
What happens on the mile stays in the mile. Yeah. That was kind of a goofy line that you hear multiple times.
Right. Like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Right. It reminded me of that.
But I guess that term probably came to prominence after this movie. And I don't really know what else they could have told him there, because he's done like a lot of bad things that only they know about. And they could hurt him badly with that. But at the same time, like, his aunt is married to the mayor, so he could totally screw them over. And they get the sense as he walks out of the room, like, we might be fine today, but eventually he's going to squeal on us and we're all going to be screwed. And then at that point, John Coffey reaches through his cell and grabs him and vomits the fly straight into Percy's mouth.
This is a weird turn for sure. I mean, it definitely feels very Stephen King. I don't know how well it like really fits with the rest of this movie and with like John Coffey as this kind of mythic innocent character. I mean, I guess it could work within like the Christ figure allegory in that he's like punishing the wicked here. But I don't know, it feels strange to me. Like, this is another part that kind of unsettles me, where he's like, he spits the flies into Percy. Percy becomes like just this shell, non-existent, you know, vegetable possessed by this demon spirit or whatever, and then walks over to Wild Bill and guns down Wild Bill in his cell and kills him. Very eerie. I mean, it works. It's really effective. Like, it keeps me engaged, but it also just like, I don't know, makes things a little bit more muddy as far as like John Coffey goes, like him being an innocent, you know, it's like, oh, well, now you really are a murderer in a way.
Well, I think it goes to the fact that Percy's an awful person.
Yeah.
He did just to Dell in general, like he gave him what was going to be a fairly inhumane death, turned it into like the most inhumane death possible. And he's about to go to a mental hospital with people who are mentally unwell. And he's young, so he's essentially going to spend the next 40 years of his life torturing and possibly killing mental patients. And now that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is a good thing, for sure.
And as I've mentioned before, I don't think that you can have love without justice. So justice happens here.
I mean, I think we touched on this idea of justice too in the 8mm episode of like, is it John Coffey's place, though, to punish Percy in that way and to punish Wild Bill? Like, he's taking justice into his own hands. He's the vigilante of Nick Cage, like we talked about there, going outside of the law, taking it in his own hands. And to me, yeah, that kind of muddies his innocence. But I guess if you believe in, did we talk about an 8mm? We talked about like
yeah, we did,
the objective justice, you know, like objectively this is just that he would punish these men, like, you know, nobody else is gonna do it. So yeah,
there's a key difference here, and it's that Nick Cage's character in 8mm, as much as I think he was justified, he was also not an ancient angelic being with a completely different moral code than humanity.
Right, he's like, I transcend this moral code, so I'll do whatever I want, basically.
And yeah, this is where we find out, because Sam Rockwell's character, Wild Bill, just happened to come to for a split second after he was drugged and grab on to Michael Clark Duncan just as they were leaving to go heal the Melinda character. And whatever he did, like, you can tell, like, that was bad. Like, that negatively affected John Coffey and messed him up. He saw something really bad whenever Wild Bill touched him. And at this moment, Tom Hanks' character gets called over. Again, boss gets called over. And Michael Clark Duncan grabs his hand, and this is where you see what really happened.
I'm eating a Dorito.
Yeah, there we go. Eat them. Which, are you eating nacho cheese?
No, I'm just eating a Dorito because you said boss.
No, what flavor?
Oh, dude, Cool Ranch all the way.
Cool Ranch. All right, I figured it was either nacho or Cool Ranch. They have so many random flavors. Did you ever get the Cool Ranch Doritos Locos Taco whenever they had them?
I don't think I did.
I feel like it could have had more ranch flavor than it did. I think that's why they phased it out. They need to bring it back and make it new and improved.
I feel like you're just holding back, like you're holding back your rage at me for your disappointment at me for having issues with the.
No, I'm actually quite pleased with you, Jordan. Despite the issues you've had, I was scared you were going to come into this just like laughing at the movie and been like, "This was dumb.
This
None of this
movie
worked."
sucked. Yeah,
And you at least didn't do that. I set my expectations really low, and you didn't go down there. So I'm
Okay.
I'm actually not that mad.
This didn't have boobs in it.
It actually has boobs for a second, because whenever they throw Percy into the little locker, into the padded cell, he's reading like a mental hospital manual, but then when they pull it aside, they reveal he's got like a little like nudie mag on the inside with drawn pictures.
Yeah.
It's like Loretta Lead Pipe or something like that.
Frank Darabont's like, this will have to do.
Hope this is enough for Jordan.
It's not no Rita Hayworth, but this will have to do.
That's as close as you get. Or I guess Patricia Clarkson.
Yep.
Yeah, so he grabs Paul Edgecombe's hand, and obviously this is Filmshake. I'm going to call him Tom Hanks. I'm going to call him Paul Edgecombe. That's just the kind of professional level that we like to maintain here.
You know the character's name. That's pretty
step
good.
Above.
It's a step above.
I'll do another Filmshake thing and go on a random tangent that has nothing to do with anything. The production designer for this movie, Terrence Marsh, amazing production value in this movie. Jordan, he also did Clear and Present Danger.
Oh, nice. One of your faves.
And Shawshank Redemption too. Yeah. In the same year. Shawshank and Clear and Present Danger, he did the production design in the same year.
That's amazing.
Terrence Marsh, legend.
You knew that guy's name too.
Yeah, that's right. Saying people's real names.
Anyway, yeah. Tom Hanks touches Michael Clarke, sees Sam Rockwell's past with William Sadler and the little girls. He was really the killer, and now Tom Hanks knows.
This was a really chilly reveal in the theater where he calls the girls into the house to eat, and you've seen like these little shots of someone painting a fence red where it looks like blood dripping, and the camera pans over to Sam Rockwell's evil smiling face. And I remember that giving me chills back when I was 18 watching this in the theater. Been 18 for a week.
And his nasty teeth.
Yeah, I'm looking at nasty teeth Sam Rockwell. Like, wow, this is adulthood.
This is what life has to hold for you.
I can legally fight in a war and smoke cigarettes, and here I am looking at Sam Rockwell wearing fake zits and fake teeth.
Yeah, I mean, the way that whole flashback is shot, I think they shot it in like a lower speed or something to make the film look more dreamlike, and it just is very eerie, and you get more William Sadler, which is always good. But yeah, you see that it was Sam Rockwell who snuck in, and there's like twins basically, and he's like, if you scream, I'm gonna kill her, and if you make a noise, I'm gonna kill your sister.
You kill them what they love. They love each other. Now you see how it is. That's the way it is every day. That's the way it is all over the world.
That's actually what old Tom Hanks, the dialogue, I guess, that he hears like in his nightmare that we hear a little bit of in the very beginning of the movie and later on too.
Yeah, like he could never move past it, and he's stuck hearing that in his dreams forever.
It's pretty rough.
And at this moment, that's when he realizes, like, okay, like I thought that he was probably innocent, but now I know he's innocent, and now I'm gonna have to put an innocent man to death. So you get another scene, you have a few where he's sitting at his kitchen table in his house. Again, this incredible production value where it looks like it is 1935, and he's sitting in a house in 1935.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And he's listening to an old song, and Bonnie Hunt comes over and gives him a hug. And he's like, what do I do? And she says, why don't you ask him what he wants you to do?
Which I appreciate.
Which Jordan appreciates. And they have a conversation. And it's really sad.
Yeah.
It's incredibly sad.
I do really appreciate it. I like the moral dilemma that Tom Hanks has here, where he's like, and he tells Bonnie Hunt, where it's like, for the first time, you know, I've put a lot of men to death, but first time I feel in danger of damnation. It's like, I'm going to kill like one of God's miracles. And I also appreciate the John Coffey, like this idea of his character that he feels so much intense empathy for everything and everyone around him, and he has like such a strong sense of the evil in the world that he just kind of wants to be put out of his misery at this point.
Yeah, because again, for all we know, he's been living this for thousands of years.
Right. And then at the same time, that, you know, to bring that word back, that does feel a little problematic or convenient.
Damn it.
For Tom Hanks's character. Because it's like, oh, you know, he has this moral dilemma. I'm going to kill, like, you know, this innocent man. But then the innocent man is like, it's all good. I want to die. So it just feels a little too convenient in that way as like a narrative device to let the story move along and let Tom Hanks do his job and kill this guy. Because I'm sitting there like, why don't you just fucking let him go? And of course, you know, he does bring up that argument of like, do you want us to let you go and see how far you get? But, you know, it's just like John Coffey being like, nah, it's all good.
Yeah, I think that the last 5 minutes of this movie shows you that he gets off the worst because of what happens here. I don't think that he gets off easy with the decision in the long run at all. I think it's worse for him that he has to do this.
Right. And it's worse for the plot too. I'm just like, you really should just like let him go and try and help him escape. You know, why not?
He doesn't want it. And I think when you rewatch the movie and you see him sobbing in his room throughout the movie, you start to realize, especially after the Dell execution, he literally feels the execution through Dell to where like electricity is permeating his body. And he's holding Mr. Jingles and like zaps Mr. Jingles basically where Mr. Jingles runs away.
Right.
Like he doesn't hurt him, but he's feeling all that. And you have to think, when he says he killed them with their love, he says that's how it is every day all over the world. So then it's like, he's feeling like he's feeling
pain. Everything. Yeah. And I do appreciate that. I mean, it does give him motive to want to be put to death at this point too. So like, I don't know. I do find that to be a fascinating character trait of like somebody who can feel that.
And it's probably immortal too.
Right. It's like I'm not going to die otherwise. Yeah.
Right. And it's difficult. Like, I think it's supposed to be extremely difficult because it bothers me too that he wants to die. It bothers me. I mean, I can't say it doesn't. It does. Darabont said, I do believe that on a thematic level, this movie is about Christ being crucified and the guys who have to crucify him and who have to drive the nails in. But the fascinating thing is, what if the guys who have to drive the nails know what they're doing? And what if they're decent, compassionate men? That's what's so provocative about the story. That's why he wanted to make this.
That is an interesting look at it, for sure. I mean, and it is an interesting take on that whole story and like the situation that we are put in with Tom Hanks and David Morse and everybody, like having to do this awful thing, even though they know this man is innocent.
And the part that really sells it is whenever the last thing he says, where he says,
mostly I'm tired of people being ugly to each other. I'm tired of all the pain I feel and hear in the world every day. There's too much of it. It's like pieces of glass in my head all the time. Can you understand?
Yes, John, I think I can.
When he says that, you're seeing Hanks's face, and Hanks just like winces. He can feel what he's saying, and he immediately tells him like, I understand what you're telling me. So that makes it even more difficult because it's like he understands.
Yeah, I mean, it's rough. I mean, it's like that whole dilemma is complicated.
And it's tough too because it's obviously a movie that otherwise seems to put a really high value around life. So for this to happen, I think it's supposed to be muddy and difficult and painful and confusing. And Darabont's kind of a bastard.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's like going from the hopeful Shawshank, that like kind of quintessential cathartic ending there, to this, to what it sounds like the Mist being total nihilism. So yeah, it's an interesting progression for him for sure.
It's funny because an interviewer, it was Creative Screenwriting that interviewed him, and the guy called it an interview. He says it's basically the anti-Shawshank, and Darabont got upset and he said it's not the anti-Shawshank. I don't agree because everybody's humanity rises to the surface. That's a measure of a great story, he said. There's a haunting and melancholy quality to the story. So I agree, but man, it is bleak. Like, it's really bleak. Like, I get what he's saying, because I think there's a difference here where in Shawshank, like, not all the guards, but like the people in charge of the prison are all awful, right? And in here, they're all decent people.
Yeah.
It's not just like a nihilistic film, but the rest of this movie is so damn bleak.
Yeah.
It's so bleak.
Will bring us on out.
Right. So you just basically have like mounting pain and sadness where like people in the theater are starting to sniffle, Jordan. It's like starts with some sniffles because he wants to see a picture show. He's never seen a movie. That's like his dying wish. Like, I want to watch a movie. So they take him to a movie and it's Top Hat. You know, they're playing it in the auditorium and he's watching the movie and you have Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers dancing around and singing the I'm in Heaven song. And he's just loving it. And you get the shot of him where the camera moves around to the front of his face and he has just like this look of joy on his face and the light behind him just turns into a halo, basically. Like, it's supposed to look like that. Like he's an angel in the moment. And he's calling the characters on the screen angels, like they look like angels. So already, like, that's really sad. Then he goes back to the cell. And then I think this also goes to like the Christ comparisons here, because Hanks has to take the medal of St. Christopher off of him because he can't wear it in the electric chair. But it feels like he's like stripping him of his divinity here almost.
That's interesting.
Okay, the sniffles are starting to get a little louder because I think a lot of people in the theater, myself included, thought like, well, surely this is going to end with him somehow becoming free and getting out of here. Surely that's going to happen. But then they pull him out and he starts walking the mile and he starts telling them about a dream that he had with the dead girls being alive again. And Mr. Jingles is there and they're all watching him do tricks in Mouseville. And then you see in the background as they're walking, Barry Pepper is starting to cry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the sniffles get a little louder. And then they get in the room. And as soon as they walk in the room, Sadler yells, "Kill him twice." And then he's like, everybody in here hates me. And because I can feel everyone's feelings, it's like bees are stinging my entire body. And then that makes it worse. They kind of calm. They're like, well, just David Morse tells them like, we don't hate you. Like, feel our feelings right now. We don't hate you. And there's no music, Jordan. Like, there's no Thomas Newman music here at all.
Again, going back to things being understated, like they really could have hammed it up here, but really well done that they pulled back.
And then you see Barry Pepper's character is sobbing now. He's just all out sobbing. And Tom Hanks tells him to wipe his eyes, stand up and wipe your eyes. And at this point, it's more than sniffles. Like, you're starting to hear like some really loud sniffs and snorts, Jordan. It's getting a little louder in the theater. My eyes are starting to burn. I need to add, I've never cried up until this point. In the first 18 years of my life, I've never cried watching a movie or a TV show or anything. And then they turn the chair on. They're not running electricity through him yet. And the mom says, "Does it hurt yet? I hope it does." And that makes it worse. And then his last words are, "I'm sorry for what I am."
Oh, so rough. So rough.
That's bad. And I think I feel
that's the worst.
That was awful. And when he said that, like, I feel like a single tear run down my face. And then it gets even worse. They start to put the mask on him. And then you get a call back to earlier with the first thing he asked when they put him on the mile.
Please, Bo. Don't put that thing over my face. Don't put me in the dark. I was afraid of the dark.
Because he's scared of the dark.
Yeah.
That's awful. And then the music starts. Finally. It's like almost like a mercy, but it's not. Because then the music is incredibly sad. So it's worse. I definitely have a tear running down my face. But I'm not making any noise yet. But I'm starting to hear people sob in the theater. People are starting to sob. Mostly women at this point. Starting to sob. And then you have the sponge. And when he puts the sponge on his head, that again has a spiritual element. It's like he's anointing his head in one way, but also it's calling back to the sponge when Jesus was crucified.
Yeah.
First, the Roman guards offered him a sponge, like to mock him. Like it had like, basically it was like their toilet paper sponge. He wouldn't drink it. And then like an empathetic person saw and ran and got a sponge with wine and lifted it up to him and he did drink it. So it's an allusion to that, I think. And then it gets worse. He starts getting scared and he starts singing the song from Top Hat.
I'm in heaven.
All he remembers is I'm in heaven, I'm in heaven. And then it's bad. I got tears rolling out of both my eyes. And now there's some men who are starting to audibly sob in the movie. And I can hear Adrian next to me sniffling. He's sniffling. And then Hanks can't say roll on two. He can't do it. He can't do it,
man. It's too rough.
He can't.
Why'd you do this to us, Nick? Why'd we go here?
And then Barry Pepper now is just completely sobbing and not covering it up. He can't wipe his tears away. He is just bawling. And then Brutal has to tell Tom Hanks, like, you got to say it, man. You got to say roll on two. You have to do it. And he still can't. And he walks up to Michael Clark Duncan and he reaches out his hand and he shakes his hand. And damn it, he hears what Michael Clark Duncan is thinking. And it's,
He kill them with their love. That's how it is every day, all over the world.
and damn it, now Hank starts crying. And then he says roll on two. And everyone in my theater is sobbing. All 200 people, because they used to let that many people in a movie theater before they gave everyone a luxury chair to sit in. You used to be stacked up on top of each other in theater seats.
I love your disdain for the luxury chair. Damn it, there used to be way more people all just stacked on top of each other. The good old days.
And we can all see each other, and we're just all sobbing together. 200 strangers sobbing in a theater. I have never in my life before or since seen anything like this anywhere ever. And I had never cried in a movie. I was bawling. Adrian was bawling. Everyone in the theater was bawling. Men, women, teenagers, of whom Adrian and I were probably about the only two teenagers there. There might have been a few other ones. Definitely weren't any kids there. We're all just sobbing and bawling. And Hank says roll on two. You see the jolt hit Michael Clark Duncan for about a second, and then the camera's just reaction shots of everyone else. And it's awful. It's so sad. It's so damn sad. And the music is so sad. And then all of a sudden, Hanks is walking into the frame. It's a really brilliant transition shot of him walking over to Michael Clark Duncan's body, which is now dead and lying on a stretcher.
Oh, wait, you forget how the light bulbs always, brighten up whenever they do the execution. But there's that amazing shot of Tom Hanks. And what's astounding to me is they don't, like you said, they don't show Michael Clark Duncan in that moment. And the reason for the lights like just sparking out and blowing up. And we don't even get like cutaways, wide shots of like the room showing that happen. It stays on Tom Hanks. And we see that kind of blurred in the background as like the lights just blow up and there's just sparks flying everywhere. And it's like slow motion pretty much. And it's amazing.
It is.
Very beautiful. And so,
right. And the insane thing is, like, in the 25 years since I saw this in the theater and haven't watched it, in my mind, I'm thinking, like, they showed the whole execution, right? Like, the camera just stayed on Michael Clark Duncan, and you had to watch him without the mask just get electrocuted and watch smoke roll off of him as he slowly dies. And they don't show you that. But in my imagination, over the last 25 years, they did.
Well, it's probably more powerful that they don't, right? Like, leaving it to your imagination.
Yep. And like I said, Hank suddenly walks into the frame because you've cut to after that. He gets the St. Christopher medal, so it's almost like he's restoring his divinity to him in death. He brings it down, and then you see his poor face, and I mean, he's just like shredded from the electricity. It's really awful. He put the St. Christopher medal on him, and then the music, man, there's just this like one bagpipe note that like rises up, and it's indignant. Look at this. This is awful. This is so wrong. It's just the same bagpipe note that the guy just keeps hitting off in the background. It's amazing. There's a lot of pretty cool musical touches in the score, but that is a great one. And Brutal looks over at him and nods, and Tom Hanks covers him. And the voiceover comes back from 2 hours and 40 minutes ago.
That's the last we see of young Tom Hanks, right?
Right. And honestly, like in the theater, that was a shock because it was like, wait, we haven't been in the present this whole movie in 2.5 hours. So if we're going there, then I'm not going to see Tom Hanks or anyone else again. It was such a weird feeling in the theater. Like, I won't see them again. Like, it's over. That's a death. It was a really weird, surreal feeling.
I mean, I still feel that way. That is strange.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a really powerful film.
It is.
You cut to the present and you find that the woman that he's been telling the story to is like, it's a really powerful story, but I don't know if I can believe it. It's a little much. So he takes her out to the shack. If you read the book, there's this character that's basically like a modern day Percy that's been persecuting Tom Hanks, old Tom Hanks. Well, he's not Tom Hanks anymore.
He's not. Yeah. He's Dabbs Greer.
He's Paul Edgecombe, played by Dabbs Greer, right? That's been persecuting him. And they removed him because he wasn't necessary anymore. Because you have like 5 novellas that all have to start and end on your narrator, and you don't have to do that here. So they cut that character out. So they walk to the shack, and he says, like, I gotta show you something. And you see the old cigar box. Who's in the box, Jordan?
Mr. Jangles. Oh, that's right. We do have another scene where we see young Tom Hanks finding Mr. Jingles in the cell block again, and like walking down the cell block holding Mr. Jingles. So we do get to see him on like a happy note, at least.
Right. And it's kind of nuts because the movie's 3 hours long, but it's like, ooh, are we going to get to see more of them? But that's it. That's all you get.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you feel about this ending and Mr. Jingles, like the power is passed through and made Mr. Jingles live this long, and old Tom Hanks is really, really old Tom Hanks. I don't know, like some of this just felt a little wonky to me. It didn't quite work.
What about it?
Yeah, it's like, it's hard to put my finger on necessarily, but it's just like, I don't know, a little too much, like just going a little too far. It kind of breaks the suspension of disbelief and doesn't feel like a very satisfying reveal as far as like, I told you this story, now let me show you my really old mouse and tell you how I'm just really old. I don't know. I guess I wanted more of what we had with Michael Clark Duncan and young Tom Hanks, and this, like I said, I really enjoyed the opening with Dabbs Greer in the nursing home, but I don't know, it almost feels like the magical realism should have just stayed in that story, and like when we came back to the present day, that's where it stops, and like we just kind of have like regular old Tom Hanks and old lady and him telling her the story, and that's it. Like I would have been fine with that, but it feels like it goes like a little bit too far with all the other stuff.
That doesn't really bother me. The thing that I think I've wrestled with is the movie got so bleak and so downtrodden, and it's just such a downer to see him get executed like that after everything you've watched. It's really awful. There is something kind of beautiful about it and like the character's nobility and death, but it's just so bleak. And
yeah,
magical realism for me, I think of like as something like a quirky thing and like a lighthearted story. Whenever it's like something that's a little more horrific like this, just personally, I wouldn't label it that way, but I mean, like, I can't argue with you labeling it that way. I mean, it's just a personal thing.
Yeah.
To me, it's like, well, that was bleak, but we're about to get even bleaker.
Yeah.
Because he starts to give a voiceover here where you get Mr. Jingles, and he's really old. In the book, he just dies here. He does his trick and dies, but that's not what happens. Because Darabont, again, thought, man, that Stephen King book had a dark ending. What if I go even darker? So basically, he gives this voiceover where he's like, yeah, it's all great, but you know what? I'm basically going to live forever. So everyone I've loved, my wife, my kids, they're all dead. Everyone that I worked with, that I was friends with, even Brutus, they're all dead, and they've been dead a long time. I'm 108 years old.
Even you, old lady that I'm telling this story to, you're dead now. Like, it's kind of an awkward transition, honestly, where he's just like, told you this story, and then now I'm going to break in a voiceover. Oh, and by the way, you're dead. and I'm still living. I'm going to live forever. I'm show your funeral and like just keep on going and going and going.
He's saying all this stuff to her in like 1995, but as he's telling her this, now the camera is actually showing you what's going to happen. So I didn't think that was weird. It didn't bother me on like a filmmaking level at all. Like on a moral level, I'm like really split with just how bleak this gets, because it's so bleak. It's incredibly bleak. It makes you feel really the opposite of the Shawshank Redemption, where it's basically like, I killed this guy. He was like a miracle of God. He was a complete innocent. And now I'm cursed to basically live forever and see everyone I know and love die. And I'm not in the prime of my life. Graham Greene gave that monologue earlier about the finest moment in his life, and that was what he got to reflect on, and then he died. But not me. The finest moments of my life happened a long time ago, and now I'm stuck in this old body that's aging really slowly. I'm going to be stuck in it for decades, maybe centuries, maybe millennia. I don't even know. And I'm just going to be thinking about all this awful, horrific stuff. I'm not going to be able to get it out of my head. And eventually, finally, after hundreds or thousands of years of that, I'm going to die. And he has the line, we each owe a death. There are no exceptions. But oh God, sometimes the Green Mile seems so long. And in a way, like, your nice joke about it on how this movie is long. So it's funny that that's the end of the movie because it's called the Green Mile.
Slide, yeah. Oh God, sometimes it feels so long. Like, yeah, you're right. You're right, Frank Darabont. Fucking 3 hour, 8 minute movie.
Right. And if the movie wasn't so well paced, then, you know, they would just be like, it is really long, but the movie's so well paced, it doesn't feel that long.
Yeah, it is really well paced. I agree.
So then the actual line of this movie is like, man, sometimes life just goes on and on. It's so long and all the joy is sucked out of it. And it's just so bleak. Like the ending is so damn bleak. It's so bleak.
That's a hell. It's like he's just living out hell.
He is. That's why I don't get why you said that like it's an out that John Coffey wanted to die, because this ends up leading to like the worst possible fate for Tom Hanks's character. Like this is the worst thing that could happen to him.
Well, it felt more like an out for the story itself, I guess, of just like, how do we get these good men to kill this guy? Oh, he wants it. All right.
I gotcha. I guess I just feel like they've shown you like enough of his torment to where it'd be like understandable. Even if I don't agree with it, it's understandable.
Right. It's like, it's understandable, but it's also convenient. I don't know.
I mean, like, I don't agree with it morally. I don't necessarily think it's convenient like you do, but it's just difficult. It's difficult.
I think after he says, oh God, sometimes the Green Mile just feels so long, we should have cut to like an actual old Tom Hanks in a movie theater watching this movie, but he's finally dead and it's just like a skeleton. I finally finished this movie. It killed me because it's so damn long.
Man, you know what else makes it depressing too is whenever he's talking to Jingles, and Jingles is 64 years old, and I think that the lifespan for a mouse is generally 5 years, so he's already like 10 times older than he should have been, which again makes it seem like, okay, well, Tom Hanks is going to live to be at over 1,000 probably. And Mr. Jingles is in rough shape. Like, he can barely even push the little thing. And Tom Hanks tells him, like, we never made it to Mouseville. I guess this will have to do. And it's like, you're at a nursing home. You're focused on all the horrible things that happen, and you can't move past them. And Mr. Jingles can't even push his little toy anymore.
Right. Isn't that the saddest shit where you're like, you're thinking, because it kind of sets it up in that way, like, oh, I told you this magical story and it was really sad, but let me prove to you that it's real. And you're thinking, you know, once they reveal, oh, Mr. Jingles is really old out here, and he gives him the little spool, you're like, oh, he's going to push the spool, you know, but he doesn't. He doesn't push the spool, and you're like, damn, that's sad as shit.
It's so uncompromising. That was really like even more than John Coffey's execution. When I watched this back in 1999, that was where I was like, that's just too far. Like, I can't go there. I'm 18 years old and I can't go there.
That is too far. You didn't even let the mouse push the spool, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, I mean, like that whole last 5 minutes, like everything that happened in it. Because I thought, like, okay, well, Mr. Jingles is back. Like, this is going to be a happy ending somehow. Like, everything's going to be okay. And it's not okay. It's not okay in any way at all.
I'm just going to live forever in constant torment in hell.
Yeah.
In an aging old body.
It's such a bleak ending. And now that I'm just a couple days from 43 when we're recording this. We're 25 years in the future. It's still really bleak, but I can appreciate it more.
Yeah.
This ending is just so difficult. I find that now, like, I can watch this movie and it's like an old friend. And there's a lot about it I find comforting.
It's like an old friend like Mr. Jingles.
Yeah, this movie is like my personal Mr. Jingles, for sure. But it still can do its tricks just as well.
Ooh, I like it. I like what you did there.
Thank you. So, I didn't know what my response to watching this again was going to be. I thought, is this just nothing is going to hit and it's going to feel like a nihilistic mess? And it didn't feel that way. It felt like an incredibly well-made, really powerful movie that is leaving me morally grappling with some really difficult things. And I think it's a masterpiece. I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10. I think this movie's perfect.
Oh, wow. Wow. Awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed it so much. Yeah.
I think when I set out to watch so many movies this year, I was a little worried. You know, I thought, I've always said this was the best year in cinema, but what if it's not? And when we watched American Beauty, I was really worried, like, damn, that was a cornerstone of the year, and that was garbage. So was I wrong? But I've watched so many other movies that I feel like have proved me right. I really do think this was the best year in cinema.
Well, I'm glad that we could go out on a 10 out of 10 for you and help cement that opinion.
Sweet. What about you, though? Where are you at on this?
With the issues that I had with it, I mean, I do still think this is a really well-made movie. Like, I love the cast. I love the slow build, like all the attention to detail, the depth that we get in all the characters. So, probably give this, like a 4 out of 5.
Nice. That's where it sounded like you were at, but I didn't know what you were going to say. So we don't end the year in like a harsh disagreement.
No, I mean, it's solid. No harsh disagreements. Movie connection I had was not for this, but it was Patricia Velasquez in Beowulf and the Mummy.
That part really is incredible, where he goes through all that trouble to save her life, probably kills 100 men, and then as soon as she's like, wait, you're going to the castle? I'm not going there, I'd rather die.
Right. I'd rather run back to these ruffians and them kill me immediately.
And I mean, they immediately kill her. It's so funny. It's definitely supposed to be
like,
funny.
It's not even a close up. It's like she's in the distance. She just gets like hacked with an axe or something. And he's like, oh, damn. And then he goes to the castle.
I feel like that movie has enough moments like that to where it's an enjoyable watch, even though it's terrible.
Oh, yeah, it's so bad.
Directed by Graham Baker, by the way, who also directed Alien Nation. I know that a lot of people are fans of that movie.
Oh, nice. I have that on my VHS shelf. I haven't watched it yet.
There you go. You can put it right next to your double VHS set of The Green Mile.
And Beowulf.
Beowulf.
All right. Well, sir, are you ready for the trivia battle?
Hold it! Pop quiz, hot shot!
Jordan, I'm so ready, because we are closing out 1999. This year has been insane. Some things happened this year in my personal life I was not expecting or anticipating. I will be living in a different parish. I'm going back home to start off next year, and I'll...
Poincapie, baby.
Poincapie Parish, and I'll be single when I'm there, which is going to be really weird. I feel like we've taken a journey together over these 5 years. We've both had some major life changes. And for me personally, those happened this year. So
both gonna be driving trucks.
Both gonna be driving trucks around. And man, it was a tough one in a way. But you know, I had my family, my friends. I had you, my friend, in this show, and my faith. And you know what? I had 1999 movies because I just stuffed those down my throat.
That's right.
Like a big piece of French bread slathered in butter, and it helped sustain me. So I'm really thankful for that. But we're done with 99 once this year's over. We're doing my dream. It was your idea, but I had a dream once. The 90s were so great. What if at the end of 1999, when I thought Y2K was going to hit, I just got sent back to January 1st, 1990? God, that would rule. And that's what's happening to Filmshake, Jordan.
That's right. Back to 1990, baby. Next year, we're just doing all 90 movies.
Yes.
Not 90s movies, but 1990 movies.
And I don't think that we'll keep doing that after that year. I think we'll go back to bouncing around most likely. I mean, no promises, but most likely I think we will. So maybe I'll just kick off 2026 with The Matrix. Who knows?
There you go.
But
there you go.
yeah, next year it's all 1990
Just have to wait
movies.
2 years for it, listeners.
Wait, a year, 1 year and a month.
Okay, 1 year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Rad. So yeah, this is our last trivia battle for our 1999 series, Jordan. I'm pretty excited, but what questions are you going to ask me? Because I don't know if I'm excited about that.
Hey, I actually did write questions. So, first of all, you shouldn't assume that I have any, but I do have some. And all my questions are about Mr. Harry Dean Stanton, who played Toot Toot.
Ooh, nice. All my questions are about movies that have a color in the title.
Oh, nice. I'll kick it off here. So question number 1. Harry Dean plays Toot Toot, a convict in the prison who helps them rehearse the executions. In what other movie does Harry Dean play a convict? A. Dillinger, B. Cool Hand Luke, C. Two-Lane Blacktop, or D. Cockfighter?
Was it in Cool Hand Luke?
That's right.
Yay.
It was Cool Hand Luke.
Yippee. Excited. All right, Jordan. I know this next movie, the first 1990 movie, is going to be your pick, so I didn't go too hard on these. I got some faith in you. All right, number 1. We both love this movie, so I think you'll know the answer. Who wrote and directed 2016's The Green Room? Was it A. Marcel Descartes, B. Jeremy Saulnier, C. Jacques de Molnier, or D. Stéphane Urkel?
Jeremy Saulnier.
Correct.
Nice. I wanted to somehow connect Green Room to Green Mile, and I was debating on how to do that in my trivia battle, but gave up on that and went with Harry Dean. So I'm glad you did.
Yeah, I did it
because I do like that movie a lot.
It's awesome. Anton Yelchin, rip.
All right. Number 2, Harry Dean, sometimes credited H.D. Stanton. He played a hitchhiker in the road movie Two-Lane Blacktop, which I just mentioned. But who directed the film? Was it A. Walter Hill, B. Monty Hellman, C. Arthur Penn, or D. Don Siegel?
I don't know. Was it Walter Hill?
Nope, it was B. Monty Hellman.
I did not know that. Which number in the trilogy is Kieslowski's 1993 film Three Colors Blue? 1, 2, 3, or 4?
Oh, geez. I'm trying to think of the French flag. Does it go in the order?
Mm-hmm.
Is it 2?
It's 1.
Ah, damn.
Man, some people that we used to be on a network with that had a low opinion of us are going to have an even lower opinion. And I don't give a shit. Screw those guys.
There you go. Yeah, I still have not seen any of those films, even though I think I bought the VHS of White the other day.
I've only seen Blue, and I was just like, it was all right. It's fine. Okay. I didn't think it was a masterpiece. I just thought it was a decent movie. I mean, whatever.
All right.
I guess I'm just a plebe.
I'll have to check it out one day.
I'll stick with the Green Mile.
All right. Question 3 for me. Roger Ebert once said that if a movie included both Harry Dean and E. Emmett Walsh, that it could not be a totally bad movie. What movie features both actors? Is it A. Repo Man, B. Straight Time, C. Dream a Little Dream, or D. The Animal?
Man, I was thinking they were both in Blade Runner for some reason, but only E. Emmett Walsh is, I think.
Yeah.
Whatever A was.
Repo Man?
Yeah.
Wrong. It was B. Straight Time.
You know, I've never seen Straight Time.
Yeah, it's a good one. I liked it a lot.
Sweet. All right. Well, one of us will win this at some point. All right. Who directed 2021's The Black Phone? Was it A. Scott Derrickson, B. James Wan, C. Patrick Wilson, or D. Fede Alvarez?
Was it James Wan?
Oh, it was Scott Derrickson.
Ah.
Who has a great working relationship with Ethan Hawke.
Okay.
He's done some pretty freaky movies with him.
Nice. I like Ethan Hawke a lot. I don't know if that's come up on this podcast.
You are a big Ethan Hawke fan. It's true. You should watch The Black Phone. He is a creep in that movie.
Nice. All right. Question 4. But which film did Roger Ebert say broke the Stanton Walsh rule? Was it A. Pretty in Pink, B, Dream a Little Dream, C, The Last Temptation of Christ, or D, Wild at Heart?
Was it Dream a Little Dream?
That's right.
All right, yeah.
The Corey Haim, Corey Feldman joint.
Gotcha. Well, I've seen 2 out of 4, and I knew it wasn't in that 2, so it was between that and one other. All right. What actor co-starred in Woody Allen's 1985 film The Purple Rose of Cairo? Was it A. Jeff Daniels, B. Michael Caine, C. William Hurt, or D. Sylvester Stallone?
It's either Daniels or Hurt. Was it Jeff Daniels?
Yes, it was. You got it.
Nice.
I really love that movie. He's really fun in it, too.
It's been a minute since I've seen that.
Yeah, I got to thank one of my film professors for making me watch that, because I don't think I would have otherwise. So I'm not like a huge Woody Allen fan.
Not a Woody Allen fan?
Yeah, and I'm talking like back in the day. Like I'd watched 2 or 3 of his movies and thought they were all right, but I love that one.
Yeah, I remember liking that one a lot.
All right, what you got next?
Next question. Last question.
Yeah, I only have one more, too.
Yeah. Harry Dean was in 2 films that won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival. So Paris, Texas was one of those films.
Great movie. He's so good in that.
Yeah, it's an amazing movie. Like 5 out of 5. Love that movie.
Oh, yeah.
What was the other movie that won the Palme d'Or that he's in? A, Alien. B, Wild at Heart. C, Inland Empire. D, Ballad of the Nightingale. Or E, the Care Bears movie.
See, I want to say Alien, but at Wild at Heart is Lynch, right?
Yeah.
And they love him over there, so I'm going to guess that.
There you go. You got it. Wild at Heart.
Yeah. Awesome. All right.
You win the trivia battle.
Wait, no. I got one question left. Maybe you can tie.
All right.
Maybe you can tie. And I'm going to promote the Patreon here. We have a Patreon. It's a lot of fun. You should check it out. It's a good time. And this question is related to that. In 2019, Filmshake recorded a lost episode on 2011's The Gray that I'm finally editing together for our patrons next year. So patrons, if you're listening, I'm going to finally, I've promised this before, Jordan and I, whenever we switched to 90s movies 5 years ago, we had a bridge episode that was never released. It's on The Gray. I'm finally going to edit that for the patrons. So I know some of y'all were excited about that. I promise it really is coming next year. Who directed that film, Jordan? Was it A, Liam Neeson, B, Louis Leterrier, C, Joe Carnahan, or D, Pierre Morel?
Joe Carnahan.
You got it, dog. I was hoping since we 5 years ago actually covered this that you would know it, and you did.
I did.
So you tied, and it's your pick next, so I'm just going to say you win.
All right. Appreciate it.
Great job. So, Jordan, before you reveal your pick, we're about to hit Y2K, and we're about to roll over back to 1990. We're not all going to die in a chemical fire, thank God.
Unfortunately.
But you know what? We don't know that the clock's about to turn back to 1990. We're not going to 2000. That's not happening. The 9/11 is never going to happen. The war on terror, never going to happen because we're just going to go back to 1990.
Everything will be peachy.
Everything's going to be peachy. But right now, I just saw The Green Mile in the theater for the first time. It was really bleak. And then I had a surgery that I thought I was going to die in, and I didn't die, but I got 104 fever for 2 weeks. I'm watching the ball go up in the air. I'm thinking, this might be it. This might be the end. And you know, I watched The Green Mile. I've done all these philosophical monologues for Filmshake. And The Green Mile is so philosophically complicated and complex. Even the director admits he's not quite sure what he's trying to say or what the movie is about.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's something that sums it up. And I'm not going to go on a philosophical monologue. I'm going to recite a poem here.
Okay.
This is Robert Frost.
This is what happens on Filmshake. You just never know.
This is what happens. I think
you never know what you're going to get.
Robert Frost philosophically summed up this movie very well in a poem that was published, but also an outtake from that poem. So that poem, Nothing Gold Can Stay. Nature's first green is gold. Her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down today. Nothing gold can stay. So that's the published poem. Everyone knows that poem. You probably had to go over that at some point. Your depressing English teacher made you read it, and you were like, damn, that's depressing.
Right. Everything just turns to shit.
Right.
We're all gonna die.
We're all gonna die. Y2K's
Like
coming.
Beavis and Butthead. We're all gonna die.
Yes. We're gonna die. It was all meaningless. We thought Beavis and Butthead's behavior was ridiculous and nihilistic, but it turns out, why do anything else? There was no point to begin with, and now we're all doomed. Well, Robert Frost actually wrote 3 stanzas for this poem. The original poem, before he whittled it down, was 3 stanzas, and this was the original last stanza of that poem. In gold as it began, the world will end for man. In some belief avow, the world is ending now. The final age of gold, and what we now behold. If so, we'd better gaze, for nothing golden stays.
Rough.
I feel like that sums up the Green Mile about as good as you can. There's no philosophical monologue I could give that could sum it up better than Robert Frost did way before the movie ever came out.
You said gays. That's Filmshake in a nutshell. You listing off some deep philosophical monologue or reading a poem, and me just being a stupid dumbass.
You know what's amazing? We're about to go back to 1990, and we get to live the 90s all over again, Jordan. So Beavis and Butthead is just about to come out. We get to enjoy years of it.
That's right. So going back to the beautiful beginning of the 90s in 1990, I just feel like where better else could we start than with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Just quintessential childhood, beautiful innocence, pizza, mutant turtles, Shredder. What else do you need from early 90s than that? So that's my pick for next time. And for the punishment, I know you've seen this film. I haven't. Part of me was like, well, should we do the sequel? Because sometimes we do the sequel with it. And nah, let's stick with our rule of picking just 1990 movies. So this is a movie I haven't seen, but I feel like would kind of pair well in the goofy lightheartedness and the green mask makeup of the turtles. And that's going to be 1990s Space Invaders.
Nice. Man, I love this movie so much when I was a kid, but it wasn't reviewed well. I'm scared it's actually terrible.
Well, the plot of this that I read earlier is dim-witted Martians come to Earth accidentally in like a small Illinois town when Orson Welles' War of the Worlds is being broadcast over the radio, which sounds, really goofy and stupid and fun. So I feel like the goofy, stupid fun will pair well with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles gnarliness.
You know, I saw Space Invaders in the theater, Jordan.
That's awesome.
And then I had a tape recorded off a TV that had Raiders of the Lost Ark, Back to the Future 2, and Space Invaders.
Hell yeah.
It was awesome.
You still have that tape?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm digging it out when I get back to Glenn.
Nice. You should watch this on your tape.
Yes, I should. Maybe I will. When we come back in January. You know, Jordan, and before you do the outro, one last bleak note. Thomas Newman's score for The Green Mile, when it hits after the movie, I'll never forget that feeling of like, it's just like what Tom Hanks said after his groin got healed by John Coffey. I think everyone's thought was,
What did you just do to me?
When the music comes up, that's what it feels like. And if you get the soundtrack score, it has the end credits music, but then it stops before the last 30 seconds. Jordan, the last 30 seconds of the music at the end credits of The Green Mile are like the bleakest, most uncertain notes I've ever heard combined together. It somehow ends on an even bleaker note than anything happened before. And I'm going to play that, listeners. You just listen after this. I'm going to play that later whenever we've done talking and the music's closing out the episode, so you can just hear how bleak it is. Because you know what? This is the last 1999 episode. I'm going to pretend like this is the end of the world. And then in January, we'll come back.
That's right. We'll be reborn.
That's right.
Which, unfortunately didn't happen to John Coffey.
Unfortunately.
We didn't complete the Christ metaphor there.
No.
I don't know what you were doing, Frank Darabont. You just totally screwed up the allegory.
Well, he lived on in the heart of Paul Edgecombe, who unfortunately had to live on forever.
Live on forever with the doom and misery of his guilt for killing the miracle of God.
You know what's crazy is he mentions making it through another century, which means he had to live through Y2K, and then was like, oh, well, I guess it's not that bad. Then 9/11 happened and everything else happened.
Hey. Okay, yeah, we're in it on a high note here. You're dipping back into the bleakness.
I can't let 1999 go, Jordan.
We're going back to 1990. We could forget all this bad shit happened.
I can't let it go. Take me back to 1990, Jordan.
You're not gonna die of your cyst. Everything's gonna be okay. Be reborn children.
Yes, I want a Game Boy for Christmas.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. Hope you've enjoyed this year of Filmshake with 1999 movies. I know I have, and I'm really excited about what's coming next. So we'll hope you'll keep listening, keep following us along for the ride. Join us at the beginning of the decade. We don't have to end things here. So if you heard Nick mention earlier, we do have a Patreon. So Nick's been doing a great job of doing some listener requests there with some special episodes for them for whatever they want to hear. That's really great. Check us out on there at patreon.com/filmshake. And if you want to reach out to us, you can find us on Twitter at 90s Movies Pod or Facebook. You can always email us at filmshakepodcast@gmail.com. And thanks for listening. And as always, we'll catch you next time for more Filmshake.
Take it easy.
You just breathe on the knob and it jumps up so much. All right, you ready to clap? All right. How long was that? Was that 3 hours and 8 minutes? Dear God, it's almost 3 hours.
Nature's first green is gold. Her hardest hue to hold. Her early life's of... shit. Let me start over.
I feel so cold. All hookers and gin. This mess we're in.
Welcome to 1990.